Please rise for Mayor Michael Fougere.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 27th meeting of City Council. Before we go to the agenda, I'd like to make a bit of a statement related to the open data web base for the city. One of our main goals as City Council and the administration is our commitment to open, accountable, and transparent information to the public. The City of Regina has an open government program that serves this goal, and we have received awards for this in the past. Open government is comprised of three main pillars: open data, open information, and open engagement. We've just upgraded and improved the open data website to further demonstrate our commitment to making information a reality readily available to the public. The site hosts both our data sets and information. It's now more user-friendly and has better capabilities. This new software has already been proven to be effective and is used by several Canadian governing bodies, including the federal government. This gives us increased data storage capability and streamlined data update. This means that more frequent updates and a wider variety of data formats are available to the public. But not everyone uses the open site. But those who do, be they residents, researchers, or otherwise, will see benefits like continuous public access to city data. Researchers and residents can access data from their own use, for their own use or analysis in a raw data format at no cost. There's no wait time, and you don't have to ask anyone for the information. This helps to encourage innovation because this data is in a format that allows app developers and businesses to use it when creating new services and applications for use by residents. And it benefits the city as well. First and foremost, it will save us time and money. We process thousands of data requests every year, so making the information readily available to the public will decrease the resources needed to respond to these requests. By proactively providing information that we know is of public interest, we can reduce multiple requests for the same information and reduce formal freedom of information requests. And we can also demonstrate our commitment to openness, accountability, and transparency. When we anticipate information that may be available to the public interest, we can put it out there proactively. This is an important improvement that maybe seems small on the surface, but it's a big step toward maintaining our commitment to openness. I want to thank the administration and the City Clerk's Office for moving forward in this area. The open database will be going live tomorrow. Thank you very much for that, and if I could have a motion to affirm the agenda.
So moved.
This would be as amended as well?
With the revisions as
Yes.
amended.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. A seconder for it? Okay. Councillor Hawkins, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The minutes for two meetings of Council on January 30th and February 13th. That's a special meeting of Council for the budget for this year. A motion to accept those. Councillor Young, seconder. Councillor Fundura. Any errors, omissions, or discussion on the minutes for both meetings? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll move on to delegations, communications, public hearing bylaws, and related reports. Our first delegation for the Carmichael Outreach proposal is Evangeline Godwin. Good evening, Ms. Godwin, and you go over to the podium just over here. If you could state your name for the record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for a presentation, and there may be questions from Council afterwards. Welcome to City Council.
Thank you. I'm Evangeline Godwin, the former mayoral candidate, with some luck, but not enough. Michael Fougere got the most luck. I'd like to mention that I support the rezoning of the corner at St. John and 12th Avenue, so that Carmichael, which is not moving into the area of heritage, they have been there 27 years, since 1990. They were a program that was started by the Carmichael Church that's no longer there since 1995. For Carmichael to move into the Heritage area at that corner would make the corner safer, because as Brian Grieg of the Health Action Victoria stated, there have been a number of fires in the Heritage area and empty buildings, and the building which Carmichael wishes to make safe.
You may have to, but just one moment, we'll see what we can do to
And you're not timing me on that one moment, are you?
I've got you covered, don't worry.
Gosh, good.
Go ahead.
Yes, good. It's back, and so am I. Anyway, as I was saying, empty buildings, and that particular building at 1210 12th Avenue, which is the corner of St. John's, a 2-block move from their present location on Osler Street, has stood empty, tempting firebugs for a number of years, and we don't need more arson. The Carmichael Service provides numerous human rights and pleasurable and necessary services to the community. They would be a benefit to any location. They serve 300 meals, up to 300 meals from Monday to Friday in bag lunches, hot until they get out in the cold, of course, and cold lunches. And in the summer, because there's not enough room to sit down where they are now, the building's much, much too small. In the summer, of course, the lunches may stay hot, but the eaters sweat. Another service that the Carmichael Outreach does is they provide milk to parents, mothers, or relatives, guardians for children under 12. They also give out, free of course, diapers from newborn size to size 6. If you still have someone that wets at night, and they're 6 years old, size 6. I did get my hair cut there because they don't discriminate. I don't like discrimination. You know, every other big shop in town seems to charge women more than men. For instance, I saw advertising saying that they have a sale. Only $3 for women, but $11 for men. Well, I don't like discrimination, even if it's a sale. Have I become mayor, or should I become mayor in the future and other people not have more luck? I would still get my hair cut at Carmichael, or I'd give bigger donations than I currently give. Among their other services is that they provide dog food and cat food 3 days a week to homeless or low-income persons. I have gone to Carmichael for myself, for hair, for instance, and I also picked up a blanket there for a woman that lives in the Regina housing building that I do. I have always felt safe there and welcome. I'm chronically old, as are most of my friends, and we all feel safe and welcome. However, there are young, more attractive and younger women that go, and good-looking men, and I feel that, by and large, they feel safe and welcome.
You have 1 minute to go, Ms. Cogden.
Pardon me?
1 minute to go.
Okay. That's about the size of it, and I say consider greatly to rezone, to let the good neighbor relocate into a much better building with 2 bathrooms and room to sit down, because even standing up for your haircut until you get in the barber's chair is a difficult thing. Questions?
Good.
Questions, any?
Thank you very much
Good
for your
people?
presentation, and I'll see if there are questions from members of council. You made your position very clear. There are no questions. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. And we'll move on to our next delegation, D17-14, Joy Reynolds and Florence Stratton. If you could identify yourself for the record, as usual, who you represent, you have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Florence Stratton, Joy Reynolds is unable to be here. We're representing and making this presentation, Making Peace Vigil. And we're here to support the zoning bylaw amendment that will allow Carmichael Outreach, currently located at 1921 Osler, to relocate to 12th Avenue and St. John Street. Here are our reasons. First, Carmichael Outreach provides a number of essential services in our city. In 2016, it served over 60,000 meals. It also runs a number of other services, including a nutrition program that aims to increase food knowledge for families experiencing poverty, a children's needs program that provides diapers, milk, wipes, cribs, and strollers to families, and a housing support program that helps people find and keep affordable housing. In addition, Carmichael operates a free store. That such services are needed in Regina is outrageous and shameful. Our city is a wealthy place, even when there is no boom. We also live in a rich province and a rich country. Poverty and homelessness could easily be eliminated. In the meantime, the services that Carmichael offers are indispensable. From the bottom of our hearts, we thank the Carmichael staff for their dedication to the well-being of the most vulnerable people in our society. Second, Carmichael has long outgrown its current space. Amongst other things, it needs room to develop a commercial kitchen. It also needs to be able to serve meals in the building rather than as a takeout service. Moreover, currently Carmichael is often forced to refuse donations for its free store because of a lack of storage. The building at 12th and St. John's will provide a much larger and better facility. It will allow for a commercial kitchen and indoor eating. There will also be plenty of room for Carmichael's many programs, with some left over for the storage of donations. Third, the building at 12th and St. John Street has been empty for at least a decade. Empty, abandoned buildings are not good for a neighborhood. The adaptive reuse of the building on 12th and St. John's will improve the neighborhood. Fourth, as for fears expressed by some in the neighborhood, Joey and I can both testify that they have no basis in reality and are likely based on stereotypes. It is our conviction that Carmichael Outreach will make a positive difference and bring many benefits to its new neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stratton, for your presentation. Other questions? Again, very clear. Thank you very much for that. You can return to the gallery, and we'll speak with Donnie Wood and Bob Ivanoko. If you please come forward and identify yourself, who you represent. You as well have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you. I'm Bob Ivanoko. This is Donnie Wood. We're representing the Outreach and Social Action Ministry of Knox-Met United Church. Carmichael Outreach was started by Carmichael United Church, 15th Avenue and St. John Street, as an ongoing outreach project when the church was closed several years ago. They have provided food, clothing, housing help, and other services to people in desperate need in Regina. They have become recognized by the poor and by the advantaged alike for their comprehensiveness and sensitivity of their services. Knox Metropolitan United Church also provides outreach services to people in need. Some former services, such as offering meals, are now provided by Carmichael Outreach. Our church has continued direct support to Regina Anti-Poverty Ministry, which is housed in our building. Knox-Met also collects food, clothing, and money, which is delivered on a regular basis to Carmichael Outreach. Some members of our congregation visit Carmichael Outreach regularly and are concerned about the lack of space to adequately meet the increasing needs for services to Regina's destitute. The former Legion building at 1872 St. John Street will provide that much-needed space for their community work. It is very close to their current location, so there will be minimum disruptions to those requiring services. In addition, a deteriorating building in the heritage community will be brought back to life. We realize that some of the residents that live near the old Legion building are nervous about loitering and potential crime. The residents have seen deterioration over many years in their neighborhood and fear that this move will continue the process. The city's support for infill housing and the increase in young families moving into the area will help to maintain community. Carmichael Outreach has worked with the Regina Police to maintain a peaceful environment in their current location. The increased space in the old Legion building will actually reduce the loitering outside the building. Members of Knox-Met who visit Carmichael Outreach have found the staff and clients always friendly and helpful. We are confident that this potential move will be beneficial to the city and the neighborhood, as well as to those who need the services. We encourage Regina City Council to approve this request for rezoning. And thank you for the opportunity to express our support for this request from Carmichael Outreach. We will be pleased to answer your questions to the best of our ability.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there questions of the delegation? Councilor Fundura.
Thank you, gentlemen, for presenting. One question, just a straight-out question. What would you say to individuals that say the Carmichael and location doesn't belong in that neighborhood?
Well, I'm a member of a Ukrainian organization which has a hall close by, and we've been discussing this, and I know some of the people who even live on St. John Street. But I think that the area has been stabilizing, and that Carmichael, with their services, are going to be able to provide more of them in-house, so they're not going to see much of the what I think they're afraid of, the people hanging around the building. So I think it's going to be an improvement.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor Fundura. There appear to be no other questions. You return to the gallery. Thank you very much for your presentation. And we'll move on to our next delegation, D17-16, Nicholas Olson. Good evening, Mr. Olson. If you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and maybe questions from council afterwards.
I'm Nicholas Olson, representing myself. City Council, Mr. Mayor, fellow delegates. I'm here representing myself, asking for your vote in approving the zoning bylaw amendment that will allow the relocation of Carmichael Outreach from 1925 Osler Street to 1510 12th Avenue and 1872 St. John Street. For nearly 30 years, Carmichael Outreach has worked in the community, supporting all types of individuals, citizens of Regina, some of whom experience homelessness, poverty, and addiction. Without an organization like Carmichael, a massive part of our city would go without food, clothing, medical assistance, and assistance finding shelter. Now, Carmichael has the chance to better serve the city of Regina by moving into a healthy, adequate, and functional building, and I ask that you support this endeavor. Carmichael's current building is in disrepair and is of inadequate size to hold all the staff and people who visit each day. In the new location, Carmichael will better be able to provide emergency services that are detrimental to the literal survival of a large group of citizens. Carmichael plays a significant role in keeping the community safer. At the February 13th City Council meeting, Police Chief Bray even cited several times the importance of community organizations, especially Carmichael, in serving the community and keeping it safe as a responsible neighbor who can assist in dealing with emergency. The Needle Exchange at Carmichael Outreach is run by Regina Capel Health Region and functions just like any other professional health service. Needle exchanges are a responsible public health practice that reduce the spread of disease by offering people the chance to exchange for clean needles. Without such services in the city, more used needles would be found in the city streets, increasing public health risks. Also of note, Carmichael Outreach runs a program from early spring to late fall called Community Cleanup, where the Carmichael community itself participates in a cleanup of the Carmichael property and also the entire heritage community every 2 weeks, picking up loose garbage, used needles, and sometimes large garbage items. Mr. Mayor, City Council, and other delegates are encouraged to join in on this volunteer opportunity. Since the proposed move is only 2 blocks from its current location, it is clear that any community concerns with Carmichael's relocation has little to do with relocation or rezoning, but rather kind of a disapproval of the Regina citizens who use the services at Carmichael Outreach. Here are some things that the Carmichael community has said in the most recent edition of the Carmichael Free Press about how to be a good neighbor when told about a potential move to 12th and St. John. Being a good neighbor is helping clean up, being friendly, saying hello every now and then, being respectful and kind, working together, being able to borrow coffee, and fellowship. It is clear that the Carmichael community understands what it means to be a good neighbor. I thank the Mayor and City Council for their preliminary discussions in regards to ending homelessness. Supporting Carmichael in their next chapter is one small step of tangible action that Council can take towards achieving that goal in our community. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Olson, for your presentation. Questions of the delegation? Again, you made yourself very clear as well. Oh, Councilor Ms. Lally.
So you mentioned the removal of you mentioned the removal of garbage. supposed to stand up. Do you guys actually pay to have that dumped if you remove big garbage? Do you look after that all yourself for the
Yeah,
neighborhood?
it'll depend on who we have around for volunteers. If someone shows up with a truck, or if we have someone's willing to give $20 to the cleanup, we can sometimes put stuff in the van and take it to the dump and pay out of either volunteer funds or whatever we have laying around. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery, and we'll move on to our next delegation, D17-17, Irene Terashima. I hope I got that right, and if not, I know you're going to correct me.
Hello, I'm Irene Terashima. I represent myself. So, hello, Your Worship, Mayor Fougere, members of the City Council. I would like to ask the members of Council a question. Do you feel confident that you can make an informed decision on this bylaw proposal if the only source of information you have is this document, which is today Committee Report CR 1710? Or do you want to know more? I feel that I want to know more because I find that this proposal document is lacking the rigor and detail that, for example, the previous two proposals have given. For clarity, that's from the Planning Commission meeting of February 1st, the restaurant and the Harbor Landing development that you'll hear on later today. There are details about this proposal that I feel that have not been included and that this information will help in the discussion today. Details like all the activities, services, and programs that Carmichael Outreach would like to run at the proposed location. One of my concerns is that going forward and approving this proposal as it is will be perceived as a carte blanche stamp of approval. Now, I know that Carmichael Outreach is not going to run with this and go, woohoo, we can do whatever we want to, whenever we want to. Like, no. They have a good idea of what they want to do, and I'm wondering if you know what they want to do. Frankly, Carmichael Outreach has a lot on their plate. They are the Swiss Army knife of humanitarian services in the city. They do a lot of things for a lot of people. If you can put up, there's a figure. It's, maybe not, but anyway, it's a poster for the survival guide. It's a map and a poster.
We're not able to actually show that, but all members of council have that in the package.
Okay. I noticed this poster at the SDC bus station last week, and as you can see, Carmichael Outreach is listed several times under different services. And you should also know that they do more than this. These are just the acute emergency services. They have a wide range of services, activities, and programs on the go. They are a very busy place. My concern is that I'm not sure if the council or anyone else knows what the new Carmichael Outreach would be like at the proposed location, especially if the proposal document is all you can go by. Can, for example, the council list all the tools in the Swiss Army knife? Can the council figure out what a Carmichael Outreach poster would look like for the new proposed location? Sort of like, hi, we're Carmichael Outreach, and this is everything we do. As I said before, Carmichael Outreach is and will be a very busy place. Each tool is sort of like a little business of their own. For example, part of food security is the lunch program, which will be sort of like a cafeteria. They will also be sort of like a medical facility, not only because of the addictions counseling and needle exchange program, but there's a nurse that comes right now once a week for a mini nurse clinic. There'll be new services provided, like washing and drying clothes, so it's sort of like a laundromat. And these are just a few examples. It's a little overwhelming to figure out all of these sort of like things that Carmichael Outreach wants to be. So I close my presentation with my initial question. Do you feel confident that you can make an informed decision on this proposal, or do you want to know more? Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Terashima. There may be questions from members of council. Councilor Stevens?
Thank you very much for coming out tonight. It was a privilege to have a chance to meet and sit down with you the other week to discuss this issue a bit further. I can't help but think when you're pressing this question of why we need to know more, that there's a concern there. And I would say as a new councillor, it's been a privilege to learn a lot about Carmichael in a short period of time. And I would say with confidence that council has a great deal of information. As someone who attended the forum that the city hosted in the community, a lot of information was shared there as well. What's the concern that you have about what's not in front of us today?
Well, other than the saying, sort of, a little knowledge can be a bad thing. I think the goal for everyone here, what we want is the best possible outcome. I think everybody here wants this to work, and then that we want it to be a success story. But getting there is hard. You have to have a dialogue, you have to have discussion, and that's based on a foundation of information and facts and details. And I'm not quite sure if everybody has that foundation of information, if this is the only thing you can go by. I think that for like Carmichael, they listen, because I know that like in the report that is the appendices, for example, Appendix 3.1, like I have a version 2.0 that's been modified and have additions because Carmichael listened to the input from the open house last year and the meeting from February 1st. So it's an evolution. This is not like set in stone. It will change. There'll be a version 3.0, a version 4.0. It's an evolution towards the goal of having the best possible outcome. So I hope that everyone here will be part of the discussion, and it won't be up to you, the councillor for Ward 3, because this is in Ward 3. But I hope that all of you will be part of the discussion and bring something to the table so we can get the goal of a best possible outcome. So I'm not quite sure what you know, but I hope you will engage in this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other questions? Councillor Murray?
Thanks for your presentation, Mrs. Tarashima. My first kind of question after hearing it is there a specific service that you think maybe Carmichael might offer in the future that, because that's kind of what I'm gathering, may cause an issue?
I don't think there's any specific thing. I think it's just like it, as I said, the Swiss Army knife. It's going to be very, very busy. So I'm concerned about just increased traffic, foot traffic, vehicle traffic, the strains on the infrastructure, increased traffic. For example, there's like a little alleyway. You see it on your appendix. That's not a real street. It's an alley. And I'm thinking, if it's approved and everything, it's going to be really used. And I'm wondering, okay, who's responsible for filling in the pothole? I'm pretty sure that's the city. So I'm wondering, city, can you have the commitment of, yes, we'll keep this little alleyway in good working order? It's sort of the strains on the infrastructure. I'm pretty sure, since it was sort of a club before, that, the water and sewer are up to speed, but it's old. It was made in 1960. And I noticed, like, across the street, mounds of dirt in front of the neighbors. So I'm thinking, either their water main broke or their sewer line broke. So I'm thinking, okay, you're having a very, very active entity on this corner. Can the infrastructure handle it? Things like that.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Other questions? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. We'll move on to our next delegation, Alyssa Becker. Ms. Becker, if you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent, you have 5 minutes for your presentation as well. And members of council may have questions after.
Good afternoon. I'm Alyssa Becker-Burns, and I'm representing myself and my husband. So the one thing I'd like you to know about my neighborhood in the heritage community is how much it changes from block to block. Our community is one of the most diverse in the city. It's also one with a low average income. And while some blocks enjoy vitality, neighborliness, and relative stability, others look destitute. A cause that's pointed to repeatedly is the irresponsible absentee landlord. When we bought our house, our real estate agent bragged as to how she had just sold 40 properties to a single owner located in Calgary. We surmised that the owner had little reason to fix up or care for those properties. Unfortunately, we live in a time where there will always be tenants, even when housing conditions are barely livable. We chose to live in Heritage for several reasons. Relative affordability of charming character homes and fixer-uppers was only one. Proximity to downtown and the diversity and character of the area beckoned strongly, and we were delighted to meet extremely caring neighbors. I'm primarily a pedestrian. I walk a lot through my neighborhood, so I see the change from block to block firsthand. In the first years we lived here, simply walking on 12th Avenue and being female, I was sometimes approached as a prostitute. I'm happy to say that in the last 5 years that hasn't happened. 12th is no longer a street that is actively avoided. We now see skateboarders in summer and parents pushing strollers. When I learned about Carmichael wanting to move to the former DVA building, my reaction was mixed. While it would be good to see that facility once again used, I have real doubts about the idea of a needle exchange and lunch program moving into a residential area, flanking a block with tenuous stability. We've seen regular public consumption of alcohol and drug use outside of Carmichael. Is that something to bring closer to homes, some of which have young children? Carmichael is currently surrounded by parking lots and faces a parkade. It is 1 block away from Waterston House and 2 blocks away from Souls Harbor and Marion Center. In its proposed new location, there will be homes on all sides. It will be only 2 blocks away from Waterston House and 1 block away from Souls Harbor and Marion Center. There is no doubt that Carmichael needs a new facility, but what does this move do to the neighborhood? How can it be seen to bring stability? Reading how other cities have dealt with similar relocation and zoning issues, I've run across a phrase, positive street-level pedestrian traffic. I take this to mean a flow of pedestrians, a human presence that isn't dominated by any one particular activity, like waiting or loitering. It's a level of pedestrian traffic that makes an area pleasant, vibrant, and inviting. Those of you not familiar with Heritage will wonder how a move of 2.5 blocks could make a difference, but it makes all the difference. Where Carmichael is currently located, there is little that is conducive to positive street-level pedestrian traffic. There is nothing to draw the casual passerby. It is avoided by those who have no reason to be there. What will keep people from avoiding the 1500 block of 12th when Carmichael moves? It doesn't matter if people are safe walking by. If people don't feel safe, they will avoid it, and that avoidance will lead to real safety issues. The blocks that currently house Carmichael, Waterston House, Souls Harbor, and Marion Center are zoned mixed. There used to be a lot more houses there, but many have been torn down. Osler is now predominantly parking lots. These 3 blocks house the only regular meal service programs available in the entire city. So a big question I have is, how did that happen? Some users of these programs are likely from the Heritage community, and I say likely because I've seen no hard data. But it can't be just Heritage. That would mean no one in other Regina neighborhoods need regular meal services. We see a lot of car traffic making temporary stops at Carmichael's front door. People are traveling some distance. The central location has worked to make these services available to users from all over the city. There are other centrally located neighborhoods, but I would guess there is not the same tolerance for these facilities there. I would guess this constellation resulted from the need for central affordable buildings in a location where either the tolerance was high or the political ability to veto them was weak. But I wonder if this laissez-faire approach to locating humanitarian services is the most effective way to address poverty and addiction.
Ms. Becker, you have 1 minute.
If the city was serious about addressing these issues, I think it would take a more active role in strategically placing these important services rather than just leaving them to go where opportunity takes. While the most attainable new location for Carmichael is even deeper in a struggling residential area, almost the entire 1800 block of Broad Street, zone commercial, sits empty. 1800 Broad is a central accessible location with lots of promising space. It's not across from houses, and it has enough draw to ensure positive street-level pedestrian traffic, but it can't be occupied by a facility like Carmichael because on their own they can't afford it. So instead they will move to our block. Ours and our neighbors' property values will likely drop or possibly become unsellable. And I hope that our neighbors are committed to staying, because it would otherwise be a prime situation for our irresponsible absentee landlords to move in. Back to the former DVA, I think it would make a wonderful community center equipped to offer public programs or even a grocery store. Both of these things are very much needed on a neighborhood level, but instead it will be used to address issues that I believe are citywide. It is time a concerted and coordinated effort to address poverty and addiction happened at a city level. And as there is hardly any research out there on the topic, this would include the gathering of actual data and independent impact assessments on the effects of humanitarian service facilities on residential areas and vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Becker, for your presentation. Are there questions of the delegation? Thank you very much. You've been very clear in your presentation. The next delegation is Shayna Stock. Ms. Stock, if you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent, you have 5 minutes for your presentation as well.
Thank you. My name is Shayna Stock, and I'm the Executive Director of the Heritage Community Association, representing that organization's Board of Directors. The Community Association has been helping to facilitate dialogue between residents and Carmichael Outreach. We've had 2 meetings and have another one planned for the next month. And in my experience, both Carmichael's representatives and the community members have been very open to communication and responsive to one another's needs. Most of the feedback we have received from community members overall has been in support of Carmichael's application. Many residents are excited about the possibility of the long vacant building being renovated and made useful and vibrant again. They see this property as being a suitable new home for Carmichael. We have also heard from a handful of residents, most of whom live in the immediate vicinity of the property in question, who are opposed to Carmichael moving to this location. We have looked into these community members' specific concerns. Property values. Our research has turned up no evidence that Carmichael's move will necessarily result in lower property values in the immediate vicinity. Property values depend on many factors and are difficult to predict. Crime and safety. The Regina Police Services report that Carmichael has relatively few calls for service. There is no evidence to suggest that the people who use Carmichael's services are dangerous to neighbors or passers-by. Litter, including needles. The Regina Capel Health Region reports that the needle exchange program run out of Carmichael has a 99.97% return rate, meaning nearly all of the clean needles they hand out are returned to their facility and properly disposed of. Carmichael also holds regular community cleanups, as you've heard. Traffic. Carmichael's lunch program feeds about 200 people every day. However, based on the location of other services accessed by their clients, most of the traffic to and from Carmichael will likely enter and exit from the west. It is unlikely that there will be a large increase in traffic to the residential areas to the north, east, and south of the building. Carmichael also predicts that having a larger space and being able to serve meals indoors will decrease the number of people congregating outside of the building. And I also wanted to point out that the Core Neighborhood Sustainability Action Plan supports this application in a number of ways. It promotes the adaptive reuse of buildings in order to preserve current infrastructure and the historical character of the neighborhood. It encourages us to expand current recreation facilities, and Carmichael does intend to lend the main floor of the building to other community organizations for holding events, helping to fill this need. The plan also encourages us to improve access to existing food programs, which this move would do for Carmichael. So taking all of neighbors' concerns and our research into account, the Heritage Community Association supports this application. With our support comes a commitment to helping to facilitate ongoing communication between Carmichael and residents, as we've been doing. We encourage Carmichael to continue to pay very close attention to its impact on and relationship with its future neighbors, and we hope to support ongoing honest dialogue. Carmichael is not responsible for the issues of crime, addictions, and poverty that already exist in our city and neighborhood and should not be blamed for bringing these issues with them. Rather, they and their neighbors should consider themselves partners in addressing these issues together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stock, for your presentation. Other questions? Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. Evening. I'm glad you're here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you said.
Okay.
One, let's talk about why did you indicate that you think all the traffic will come from the west and not gravitate east or north or south?
From what I understand, a lot of Carmichael's clients come to Carmichael for lunch, often also use Marion Centre and Souls Harbour for various services, or the detox on Osler and Victoria. So all of those services and downtown public library, all those services that are often used by a lot of Carmichael's clients are west.
Okay. Thanks. How would your community association make use of the facility? You indicated it may be open. How would you use it?
There's currently no large space in the neighborhood besides churches or other, Ukrainian German club, those types of service organizations. There's no kind of non-religious and non-partisan building where we can hold public events. I would see Carmichael space as a potential use for us to have larger programming, community forums, that kind of thing. I mean, it would be obviously have to happen in dialogue with them, and I don't know how their space is going to be set up, but it would fill a need in that way for us.
Okay, thanks. You kind of cautioned Carmichael a little bit about relationship with neighbors. Can you give them a couple of suggestions as to what you think would be really good to make sure the neighbors are comfortable with what's going on?
I mean, we've been having conversations already, and I think they've already responded to some concerns, including building a higher fence than was originally intended, thinking differently about the entrances to the building. I think the main thing is just to continue having those conversations. There may be other concerns that arise down the road that neighbors haven't thought of yet, and I think as long as there's an openness and a continued openness to dialogue and to responding to concerns, then that's the main thing.
Thank you. Are you comfortable that if I asked later on tonight to the next speaker, if you and I could go for coffee there and maybe meet with them, that we would be welcome there?
At Carmichael?
Yeah, at Carmichael. In the new building on
Yeah.
10 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, absolutely. They've been very clear that they would welcome anybody in their building.
So the neighbors are welcome there as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other questions? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. We have Bill Naher and Cora Kachari from Naher and Associates. They're here to answer questions only. So if members of council want to ask questions of this group, you're more than happy to bring them forward. No formal presentation. Perhaps you can identify yourself for the record, who you are and who you represent.
My name is Cora Goyari, and I'm the Executive Director of Carmichael Outreach.
My name is Bill Nair, and I'm a board member for Carmichael Outreach.
Excellent. Okay. Questions? Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk through some things that we discussed previously at Planning Commission. I would like everybody to hear some of this. So let's pick up on the point that was made. Is the building actually going to be open sometimes for the community association or other groups to be able to use? Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
Well, it depends what kind of space we actually end up developing inside of it, but if we have the space, we would absolutely welcome people to use it.
Thank you. Could you talk about hours of operation, please?
Right now, we're open from 9 till 4:30. We're closed over the noon hour, and that's Monday to Friday, and on Sundays, we're open. Well, we're not open, but we have food service from 12 till we run out of food.
And the plan for the future would be hours of operation?
Well, we've been toying with the idea of expanding the hours later in the evening and possibly on weekends, but we have no firm plans right now at this moment.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the area around the building and the area around the building. So to the north, there's a parking lot. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Could you describe the situation with the parking lot and the concerns that you heard from the neighborhood and how you're going to address them, please?
Yes, we've actually had a wonderful dialogue with the residents in the community, and the intent is to do some proactive changes to the design, such as making a more complete fence around it with a little bit higher to sort of screen the back parking area, but also to provide areas as well at the back that will allow for some gathering and sitting that really isn't on-street, that would be off-street. And the intent as well is to bring the entire building, not only the parking area, but the building exterior itself, up to a completely a new level, so that it looks like a brand-new building and fits more into the character of the neighborhood.
So some exterior renovations in addition to interior reservations?
Substantially, yes. It will look very different and have a very different feel when we're done.
Thank you. So let's talk about the exterior of the building, and maybe let's throw in the word safety. Let's try and put that together, please.
Certainly. That was one of the things that we looked at immediately, was to make sure that we have all the things in place that allows our building to be secure. So we have, first, we have some, what you would almost consider passive considerations, so lighting. The building will be well illuminated, but the illumination will be at a level that will not be distracting or harmful to the residents in the area, but will make sure that all the buildings of the area will be visible during the evening. As well, we will have monitoring cameras that will be set up in the building that will allow us to see what's going on in and around the building to make sure that those areas are secure. But as well, there's general, when the building is open, people are out and about making sure that everyone on site is behaving. And we really do believe that when we put people into an environment that is more welcoming and more conducive to passive behavior, that they will act and be respectful, and also will live up to the expectations, I think, that we have.
Thank you. One of the things that we heard discussed at planning, and I think publicly, was about loitering and so on. So I'm going to ask a little bit about your concerns that you may have with loitering and how to handle that.
Basically, we don't really like loitering or anything. And what we do at the building right now, which we will continue to do, is what we call building sweeps. So we actually check around the sides of the building, and if there's people loitering, then we ask them to move along or come in, or, we don't welcome that at all. I think with a bigger building, there'll be less of that, because there will be more room. I don't know if you've ever been in Carmichael, but it's a Frankenstein building for one thing. But it's like two buildings fused together, and there's very limited space. So we can have sometimes wall-to-wall people, and can have up to like 200 people come through a day, and we just don't have the space for everybody to fit inside. The other thing, I believe, is we're going to make space for people to go where they're not loitering around the building, but where they're supposed to go, say if they want to smoke or something, or stand outside. So.
Gotcha, thanks. I've had the pleasure of being in both buildings, by the way, so I understand the difference in size. So specifically the building, there's an upstairs and a downstairs?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you maybe describe what it is you have in mind roughly for upstairs, downstairs?
Certainly. The upstairs will primarily be the main gathering area, but it will also provide a washroom area and facilities. It'll be the area where we can not only serve our meals inside, which is a very big thing for us, but also to be able to provide different programming. One of the things that we're excited about is the opportunity not to have to kick people out when we start programming through the day. So it'll be an opportunity that we can actually have a number of things going on in the main hall. The area that currently acts as the stage and as a small kitchen will be expanded, and we'll be putting in a commercial kitchen that allow us to properly handle the meals. And along with that, too, we're hoping that we can expand into doing things such as some training in terms of things like food safety and nutrition and all of that. So we see the main floor as really the area where there's the most sort of interaction. The lower level will be desperately needed office space. Right now, we have a couple of office spaces that for sure we would be called up on charges with Amnesty International if they ever saw what we had. But the reality is that there will be offices there, but the other half will also service our clothing boutique, and that will give us a larger space not only to take donations, but to have them available. Another part that will be in the lower level will be an area that we will have a laundry facility. So that'll give people the opportunity who don't have access to that to come and do their laundry and take care of personal needs like that.
Thank you. I'm going to tell you the impression I'm left with, and I ask you to comment on this. In the current facility, you're jammed, and even if you wanted to do something, as a resident or as somebody who needs the services, I have to come and leave, and really there's no place for me to be. What I'm hearing in this facility is I have a place to be. I don't have to linger outside. I can come in, and whether it's in the main hall, have a coffee and wait, or whether it is downstairs for a gathering or a meeting, and I don't have to wait outside for my turn. Am I getting the picture here?
Very much so. And I think one of the things that was mentioned previously about inviting the community into the space, that's something that we really welcome and that we weren't able to do in our current space. One of the great things is that the more that we have a chance to interact with each other, we have a chance to learn about one another's story. And as we find out the story, we see people in a different light. Right now, it's in and out, and there's no time for that interaction. So we would welcome all members of the community to come out, check it out, sit down, have a coffee, and meet some folks and find a little bit about their background. So it's an opportunity, I think, not only to expand what we have, but to further sort of create this better dialogue between the people who we serve as our Carmichael family and the citizens in general.
Thanks for the invitation. I'll take you up on that.
Great.
I want to kind of set the stage for my last question, but you obviously have met with the community before, and the community said some things to you. And the nice lady before made reference to that. Can you just speak about some of the things you heard and what changes it meant for what's before us today?
Completely understand some of the concerns that are brought forward. Often, we sometimes fail at telling our story, and I think one of the things that we've taken away is Carmichael needs to talk a little bit more about the kinds of things we do and the people who are involved in the services. So that was definitely one of our takeaways. But also, we've always wanted to make sure that they understand that what we're doing in the building, our intent for the building, we want to make sure that there's always a dialogue. There's a lot we can accommodate, and we think some of their ideas were great, and we're happy to do that. We want to be good neighbors, and we want the new facility to actually be a catalyst for growth. And I think once the building is up and cleaned up, I think it'll be exactly that. But the dialogue needs to continue, and we hope that all the members of the community will always feel welcome to come in and talk about the way things are going, some of the concerns they have, or if they would like to even help us out and help continue to develop the goodwill in the neighborhood. That would be fantastic.
Thanks very much. My last question, and this is the tough one. So I have stood here many times over the course of 10 to 11 years, and when there's been either humanitarian or group homes or so on, oft have a lot of people that show up that are opposed. Today we had people that were in favor. How come?
I really don't know, but it's awesome. I don't know, the first thing I did when I got to Carmichael was, because I wasn't really sure what I was getting into, I knew the organization itself, but I tried to kind of play with the atmosphere, make it a warm, friendly family place. I call it the Carmichael family. It is very much like that. And I think when people come into the center, they can feel it too. And we're always really welcoming and friendly, and we laugh a lot. I think it's just the center itself. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Donald. There are other question for you, Councilor Flagel and Councilor Bresciani after.
Thanks,
Councilor
and
Flagel.
welcome out and to everybody else as well. But do you currently own the space you're in?
Yes.
You do. What would be the plans for that?
We are looking at selling it.
Okay.
The reality is we need the equity in there to help pay for the new building. So
Okay.
the intent is it will be on the market if everything proceeds as
Sure.
planned.
Providing this goes through, what's the time frame that you're looking at to either start renos or occupancy, or where are you on your list of things to get done, and if this was to go through tonight?
Well, we've put a lot of things in place, and we've done a lot of planning already. So if it does proceed, then our intent is to get in there as soon as we can, and we would love to have Carmichael moved over and the building renovated by midsummer, no later than September.
Of 17?
Absolutely.
Okay, just want to clarify. So your renos you talk about inside and outside, would that be an ongoing, the outside exterior as an example, would that be sort of something you would like work at a little bit, or would you have it done?
I think it's very important to put the best foot forward. So our intent is to deal with that directly, because that very much is the public face of the building.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to hear on that question. Your hours of operation are 9 to 4.
4:30.
Sorry?
4:30.
Or 4:30. What's going to happen to the building from 4:30 to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night?
We've looked at a number of things, and our intent is to see if we can't get the building used as much as possible, again, as part of being the community.
Right.
We've already had discussions with the Community Association. We'd love to make it open to them to hold classes, to have events, that kind of thing. So when we're not using the building, we're happy to have the community come in and enjoy it and experience the building themselves.
Glad to hear that portion as well. One of your friendly mates or whoever, Souls Harbor, is moving out or has moved out or is going to in the near future. Do you see that as a huge impact on your establishment?
Yeah, I think more people will come, basically. Yeah, and probably the meal service especially will pick up, because a lot of our folks go to Souls for meals, and with it out of the neighborhood, it's only going to increase our traffic.
Yeah. So if
For food, especially.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, through you, Mr. Mayor, you only provide lunch.
We call it a meal service takeaway. And
okay.
So we start at 11, we serve till 12. Ironically, we close over the lunch hour, and we serve from 1 till we run out.
Right. But you're not
63,000 meals last year.
You're not a sit down.
No, we're not.
You're a box lunch, take it and go.
Yeah.
Wherever you go.
Yes.
So, how does that work today with? And I'll just say it, with litter. And you've got people walking out of your place, grabbing their food, throwing the, it's like some of the people in different residents blame one of the big box stores for littering because it's their bag, but it's actually the person. How do you deal with that today?
We have community cleanup, usually from about, when the snow melts till the snow falls.
Yeah.
I don't notice a whole lot of litter, actually.
Perfect.
And also staff, when we do our building sweeps, we will pick stuff up if we find it.
Yeah. I think it's George Thomas was one of the original in the church, right?
Yes.
I don't know if any of you guys were around at that time. I don't think he's around. Sorry?
George Palmer.
Palmer, I'm sorry, not Thomas. Yeah, Thomas is a different guy. Was there any kind of a legacy vision put out by people that started this that you're seeing come to fruition today with this type of a facility? Because I know he ran out of the church on 15th. Do you see any correlation between what's going on today and just a larger scale of what they were doing back 25 years ago?
Absolutely, and I think we were called the Swiss Army of social organizations, Swiss Army knife. I think a big part of it is the way we respect the folks that use our services. I don't use the word clients, I hate that word. And that's kind of embedded, that is his legacy. And the other thing, the Swiss Army knife analogy is great, because what he did, we continue to do, and that is respond to the needs of community. So we actually kind of build what we do around the people that use our services.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Flego. Councilor Bresciani.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for feeding our poor, our homeless, and our most vulnerable. And I've used your services. I've donated food there, and could not believe what a small space it was when I did. My business was at the Regina Inn years ago, for 20 years, and I know as well the hotel would also bring over food. But one of the things I want to know about in your plans is, with the other organization, Souls Harbor Moving, would there ever be an opportunity to look at the option of having a meal there at all? Is that ever in any of the discussions with the sit-down meal?
Oh, absolutely.
There is,
Yeah.
okay, with the extra
That's one of our biggest goals, because there's nothing more dehumanizing than needing a meal in the first place, but to stand out in minus 40-degree weather or plus 40-degree weather makes it even more so humiliating.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That is wonderful, because I think that was one of the concerns whenever I would bring the food, or we would bring the food, is that these people would be taking their bag, and it was almost, I don't want to say inhumane, but taking their bag and leaving. And when you spoke, you indicated we want this to be a welcoming place, a place where we can build community and like a family. And I think that's exactly why you have the support here, that like you do tonight. And building on those life skills, I think treating people like a person, and they come and we can actually have a conversation. So one of the other questions I do have is, in the plan, will you be able to, anyone with a wheelchair, will they be able to access any of this?
Yes, yes.
The intent is to, we originally looked at putting a ramp outside, and then we looked at things like climate and also accessibility around the building. So the intent is actually to have access to the upper and lower levels through a lift.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. And thank you again for the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barshnani.
Thank you. I just have one quick question because everything else has been answered. Is there anything new that you're going to offer from this new location that you're not able to offer where you are now?
It depends what community wants, I guess.
I think one of the things that we've always talked about is being able to sort of expand our abilities to prepare people as they travel through the different stages of their journeys. And so, for sure, if there's opportunities that we can provide more life skill training and that kind of thing, I think that would sort of be a natural. And our goal is, as much as possible, if we can provide things that are not currently available. We certainly are looking at the needs all the time and assessing what's changing, what can we do better.
Great. And do you partner with other groups like Canadian Mental Health Association for those life skill trainings, or the library, or anything like that helps expand upon or supplement what you do?
I think our biggest partnerships are in the area of housing, so we have some pretty stable relationships with Phoenix Residential Society, YWCA. APSS is another one, although that's not, we send a housing coordinator over there once a week to help their folks over there. I'm trying to think who else. SWAP. My mind is drawing a blank, but we have lots of partnerships. I actually wrote a list once for a proposal, and I had to shorten it because it was taking up too much space. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you, Councilor Bryce. Councilor Young?
Thank you for coming this evening. When you spoke to us at Planning Commission, there were some ideas that were put forward. In fact, we had quite a long, involved talk about that, and I'm sure Councilor O'Donnell will review that when it comes time. But one of the ideas that came forward that I heard you talk about this evening is being able to gather in the back of the building, so because there isn't much space in the front of the building, there's just the sidewalk. And it sounded like you said you were going to have a gathering place in the back of the building. Is that correct?
Yes, that came out of the discussion with the community, and the intent was there was some concern that there would be people prior to our hours of operation or after that they would be hanging out in front of the building. And one of the proactive ways to deal with that was to create a nice inviting space that's sort of within the fenced area in the back and allow them to hang out and talk and have a smoke if they want. And it just is maybe a way of potentially alleviating what might have been a concern.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you actually do listen, and there's one example of that, and you plan to keep on doing that.
Absolutely. If we'd be foolish to think that we have all the answers, and it's great to listen to the people in the community. And the more that you can create the dialogue, the better things get. So,
thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Young. Councilor Stevens.
Thank you very much for being here. I'd also like to extend thanks to the other delegates who spoke. One thing I heard throughout, I think, the last couple of months when I've been engaging with residents about this issue is people don't want to leave heritage, they just don't want it in that particular location. And I know Carmichael had done an impact assessment that ended up with this particular building. Could you comment a little bit on the proposal that don't leave heritage but maybe explore some of these other locations? What is so special about this, and did you look at other options?
Yes, we actually did. The process was at least a year from start to finish. And we looked at the entire neighborhood. We felt for sure staying in the heritage neighborhood was important. But also we wanted to see what our impact would be in other areas. For very specific reasons, we excluded 11th Avenue because we believe that 11th Avenue is best served by new businesses and shops and people living on there. So that's, it doesn't need a humanitarian service. The other thing was to look at where some of the other services are. Studies have proven when you cluster too many of them together, it really does become a bit of a problem. And understanding what the future of the Souls Harbor made it, we didn't think that it would work best. This was perfect in the sense that it is really just across the back alley from currently a mixed zone area. And truthfully, the building itself is probably improperly zoned. It doesn't fit, and it would be a non-compliant use at the moment. It fit well. It faced the right direction in terms of access will generally be from 12, so we won't have people sort of wandering from all areas as we do now with the parking space. It seemed right. The size seemed appropriate. And we like the idea of being able to have a connection to the community, and we really believe that's important. Where we are now disconnects everyone from the community, so it feels like such a very institutional and isolated place. And our goal is to have people feel like they are part of the community. So by being in a facility that we can control in terms of access around as best we can, but also have the scale that's appropriate, something too large would probably not be the best. We just thought it was the perfect fit for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions of the delegation? Thank you very much for answering those lots of questions tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the main report, I'd like to have a receive and file for the communication. Councilor Stevens, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So the report we'll be considering now is CR 17-10, which is an official community plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the humanitarian service facility Carmichael Outreach at St. John and 12th Avenue. Councilor Donald.
Thanks very much. If I could have a seconder, I'll speak to this.
Second for it. Councilor Fundura.
Thank you. So specifically what you're being asked to do is an amendment, and so that this building now becomes part of the MX, or mixed residential area, and it allows for a humanitarian service to go in. So you're not actually approving some of the things that we talked about. It's a change of designation, and the end result, of course, is what you heard. I want to pay a couple of compliments first. The first one is, and this goes back to Planning Commission when I said it to all of the people that were there, I've sat here too many times and heard people who, not in my backyard, look at this in this area, not these residents. They came forward with, I thought, some very, very good concerns. But then what you heard also is that the proponent, in this case Carmichael, listened. And I will go through a couple of those. One was the parking lot. So why would they have a parking lot? Well, I was told they have 12 staff. It's not the people that are coming up to use the service that are driving cars, it's the people that are working there. So there's a parking lot. How to control that? With foliage, with fencing, and so on, and take it away from the street and push it to the back. And yes, there'll be recycling and so on that goes on there, but also becomes a gathering place. You also heard that the lighting, the area around the building will be handled. And what you didn't hear tonight so much, and I'm not going to try and put words into people's mouths because they have to come up with a business plan, was to extend the hours of operation so that when people are leaving one facility or coming from a certain area, they have a place to go and walk in. It might not be right at mealtime, it might not be right at food service time, but they have a place to go in and stay. And also on the other end of the day, where it could be extended a little bit so people have a place to stay as well. That will create a safe environment. Cameras, lighting, and so on all work that way. But I think far more for me is the fact that you have, and I heard this word a couple of times tonight, research, not property values change. We look after people. it's not good to congregate everybody in one place, so facilities need to be spread out. There is a clientele in this area that we heard from clearly at Planning Commission that come here to use the services. What you also heard is that this is a respected organization in not only the local community, but the greater community. I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and Planning Commission certainly recommends this.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Speakers to the report. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm in favor of this for a lot of different reasons, and part of it is the growth of the community. I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that were talked about in terms of what it might do to the area, but I'll leave that alone because they're already in the area. Souls Harbor's there, Marion Center's in there. Carmichael has been on 15th Avenue in the church for a number of years prior to moving to the other location. You know, it's funny because this area has always been, I mean, I'm not 25 years old, and I used to work at the Marion Center when I was about 14, going in there and volunteering and sorting clothes and cutting vegetables and cutting all kinds of things as a young kid. And you got to see how these people lived, and it's imperative that we as a city continue with these types of programs because there are always going to be those types of people that need assistance regardless of you know, where they came from or their monetary, if they have none, or they just can't afford to seem to get things going. So I applaud you know, yourselves, Carmichael, and all the other organizations in the area. And I think this is the time when this place will flourish, and that's why I asked the question, because Souls Harbor is moving out. They're going into a bigger, better facility at some point, and the onus is going to be, and I'm going to put the pressure on the Carmichael people because I think there'll be a lot of people coming forward that they hadn't seen in the past, and the number of meals that they're going to be supplying and possibly going with the hot lunch or hot meals might be something to look at as well further down the road. But the upside to rejuvenating this building and this location also is that there may be the community center approach. Most community centers don't get utilized during the day because people work and they have all kinds of other things going on. So the 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 timeline might allow them to do that, which does bring a question for the admin. If they were to look at doing that type of a thing with community associations, does it change their zoning? Do they have to go with a different zoning than what's presently here in order to accommodate having it set up as a bit of a, maybe yoga classes or, you know, whatever? Does it have a change?
Ms. Harlock?
Worship, no, at this point, once the zoning is in place, it wouldn't require that.
Okay, good. So they wouldn't have to come back here again just to provide a different service. But it's one of those things that, again, through the neighborhood, I think it's a great idea. That was my only question I had. The concerns of the neighborhood, I mean, it's a come and go, 9 to 4:30, and then people disperse and go where they typically go. So I think what you'll find is that if this does turn into something that's available after hours, the neighborhood is really going to benefit from it because they'll be able to stay within their neighborhood to go to different art classes or whatever the case might be. Cathedral area has their community center on 13th Avenue, and I know that place is busy all the time, so I would expect nothing less than this. So good luck with it. I hope it passes. I'll be voting for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Other speakers? Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Worship. I'm definitely going to be supporting this. And the reason for that is that there's a sense of ownership. And, excuse me, if you're looking at different, like for instance, youth homes was set up in Regina, they're mostly in the neighborhoods. Why? Because you need to educate and show the sense of community to the people that are less fortunate, need help. And I think, excuse me, I think this place, I'm reading about there might be crime, might be this. I don't see it. Because this, again, I'm going to say the sense of ownership. The people that come there, the Carmichael Outreach, they're going to be, it's pride in that area, pride in the building, pride in the neighborhood. Everyone's going to make sure that What comes there stays there, and I don't believe there'll be more, let's say, crime or other things. So with the people coming in, they'll see that there's a value in their life and who they are, and there's a value that people care about. Some will have life change because they'll see how the neighborhood acts and reacts. I mentioned about the Ukrainian community in that area, the German community, all the ethnic community that settled there. Everybody lived together. No one was afraid of each other. And that's the value of community. So we'll be definitely supporting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fundera. Other speakers? Councillor Stevens.
Well, I stand in support of this motion, and I would like to say to the residents who have spoken tonight, showing concern, I have yet to encounter anyone in my personal engagement with the community that would kind of fit that typical NIMBY attitude. I think Councillor O'Donnell said this, that people are genuinely concerned with this community. And I have seen nobody yet that say we want them completely out of heritage. And I think a great deal of respect is owed to those who came out, have engaged, come out to community councils, come out to public forums. I'd also like to acknowledge, again, that Carmichael has been incredibly active and accommodating when it comes to working with the community members, with Heritage, and myself, and speaking about good neighbor agreements. So this isn't something that has just kind of come to this point. We're rolling the dice, see if it passes. There's been a lot of conversation with everybody who's party to this motion and will be affected by Carmichael moving into this community. And I think that impact will be positive. So I think it's really a great demonstration of the city's involvement. As a councillor, I've really enjoyed being part of this, and the community engagement's been terrific. And I look forward to seeing Carmichael move into this space, and I have no doubt that it'll be a benefit to that area of Regina.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other speakers? Councillor Hawkins, could you take the chair, please, for a moment?
Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I want to start by thanking the delegations. Very respectful conversation, and those who have concerns have done them in a respectful way and understand the nature of the work being done. So I certainly want to thank the delegations for and those who have concerns. I want to say just for a moment, too, about the work being done by Carmichael Outreach is really an incredible service that we need. Unfortunately, we need this service. For those who are least able to take care of themselves day by day, those who are facing tremendous struggles every day, we have an organization that is very professional. It works very, very hard, and the people I deal with and speak to at that organization are so committed and generous in their way that the work that they do is just it's quite incredible to see that. I would say, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that I understand the reasons for those people who live in the area who are concerned, but I want to stress, as Councillor Stevens stressed, they weren't saying no, they're saying we have questions and answers we need to have. And I note that Carmichael has said, and the Community Association has said this as well, there has been an outreach by this organization to the community to adapt and understand what they want, to fit in. An open door to go in and see what they're doing. Please come in, see what we're doing. They will change their programming, work closer with the Community Association to provide more programming. These are all really important ways that an organization like this integrates into the community and is accepted. So this isn't a question of NIMBY, it's a question of education, understanding, empathy, and knowing that this organization is so fundamentally important to the quality of life and the survival of so many people. So I'm definitely supporting this proposal. It's in the same area, and many of the people who are walking through their doors are walking, they're not driving. And to be in the same area is absolutely critical to reach the same people who need that help each and every day. I'll definitely be supporting this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other speakers before Councillor O'Donnell closes debate. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. I just want to finish with maybe a comment and an invitation, although I'm not sure that I should be the one inviting, but I'd ask the folks from Carmichael that after you've I sense it may pass. After you're operational after a month or maybe even two, in other words, you have a routine going, I'd like you to invite council in, and that'd be one. But I'd also like to extend an invitation to some of the good folks that came tonight. One lady said, but do you know what you're dealing with, and do you know the long term? So I'd like to address that at that time by being there. So give them a chance to see how it goes, give you a chance to operate. I'd like to come.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. You've closed debate, so there's no further discussion. I'll call the question on report 10. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Good news. So we have two bylaws. Councillor Hawkins? You perhaps turn your microphone on?
Sorry about that. I move, seconded by Councillor Stevens, the bylaws number 2017-6 and 2017-7 be read a first time.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council will now consider two bylaws associated with the previously proposed development of a humanitarian service facility at the corner of 12th Avenue and St. John Street. Number 217-6, which amends the Regina zoning bylaw to permit the reuse of an existing commercial building, and bylaw 217-7, which amends Design Regina, the official community plan bylaw. If there's anyone in the gallery who wishes to speak to either of these proposed bylaw amendments, I would ask that you indicate your interest at this time. There is no one, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll call the vote on first reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Bresciani, the bylaws number 2017-6 and 2017-7 be read a second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor Findura. The Council hereby consents to bylaws number 2017-6 and 7 going to a third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Thank you. Finally, I move, seconded by Councillor Murray, that bylaws number 2017-6 and 2017-7 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we'll move on to next delegation. Under Delegation Communications and Related Reports, Yvette Crane. If you could identify yourself for the record. We represent you. Have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions from members of council afterwards.
Thank you. My name is Yvette Crane, and I'm a member of the Regina Blue Dot Movement. Your Worship, the Mayor, and members of City Council, I'm here to speak in support of the motion to adopt the City of Regina Declaration, the right to a healthy environment. You've already heard from us 3 times over the past 12 months and many more times by email and phone, so I don't want to take too much of your time here today. But we did feel as a group, many of us again in our blue behind me here, that it was important to come back and witness the final formal passing of this motion forwarded to you from Executive Committee, and above all, to thank you. Thank you to our City Councillors for your diligence in reviewing the proposed declaration of the right to a healthy environment. I know there were times when I was frustrated over the past year, but in thinking about it, I also wouldn't want a City Council who just approved something because I said it was a good idea. So thank you. Thank you to the City Administration and City Manager for your very thorough report, which we read with attention. We especially appreciated how well the Blue Dot Declaration initiative was shown in the report to dovetail with the Design Regina official community plan. Thank you for passing this declaration, making a statement, and showing leadership as a city and provincial capital. I'm so proud today. Personally, it really reaffirms my faith in the process, that citizens with a good, well-researched, well-founded idea, lots of hard work and consultation can work together with you to make positive change in their community. There are many young people and folks with young families who are members of our Blue Dot group. They tell us they are doing this for their children and their children's children. Some were here back in January 2016 when City Council first considered this motion. I know they were disappointed in the initial deferral of the motion. But what a great lesson in public involvement and democracy. You have a very young citizen here today who's been at a number of these meetings. You should talk to him about why he supports the Blue Dot movement. If you truly believe in an idea and you have the support, you need to do the work to make it happen. As for Regina Blue Dot, we'll continue our work locally and nationally. At Executive Council last week, Councillor Murray asked about which countries already have environmental rights in their constitutions. 3 of them are Norway, France, and Ecuador. It's actually much easier to give the list of the few who don't. As of 2012, 177 of the world's 193 UN member nations recognize this right through their constitution, environmental legislation, court decisions, or ratification of an international agreement. That's 177 out of 193. Those who don't is a short list of 16, which includes, sadly, Canada, the United States, China, Afghanistan, Myanmar, and North Korea. We'd be happy to provide the source for that and any other research or data that might be of interest. So our next job as a group may be to work to change just that. We are meeting right away, first to celebrate, and then to decide what our next projects will be. That will, of course, include following with interest the work on the OCP and fulfilling the spirit of this declaration, which, as you know from the motion, includes the City of Regina sending letters to the provincial and federal governments, encouraging them in turn to develop provincial and federal legislation that supports all people's right to live in a healthy environment. And we'll be following the achievements of targets and actions set in the OCP, and of course our special interest is those that dovetail with the declaration. To finish, we just wanted to add that we would welcome your input, your questions, and we are happy to provide information. And that would include assisting the city to promote and celebrate the passing of this declaration. And we echo Councillor Young, who suggested at Executive Committee finding ways to share this report on the OCP. For example, if a summary is provided, we could share that with our over 300 email members and through our networks, along with the full report. I would ask respectfully that you please approve the report before you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very articulate and very well spoken as always. Questions of the delegation? You're perfectly clear tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can return to the gallery. And we will now look at Executive Committee report, the right to a healthy environment. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to begin by saying, on behalf of the whole of the Executive Committee, how much we appreciate the work, the dedication, the thought, the commitment that has gone into promoting the right to a declaration to a healthy environment. I also want to mirror the Mayor's words when he said how coherent and articulate the spokespersons for the group have been. The Executive Committee first started to deal with this matter, as has been mentioned, a year ago. It's been sent back to the administration for clarification. Good clarification has been received. And at the Executive Committee meeting several weeks back, we had a very good discussion about the right to a healthy environment. And that discussion really made 2 points. The first point was how strong the support was of all the members of Council for the rights set out in the declaration. And in particular, just let me take a moment to mention the very first right, the charging right. Rights of Regina residents to live in a healthy environment include the right to breathe clean air, the right to drink clean water, the right to access to safe and healthy food, a right to access nature, a right to know about pollutants and contaminants released into Regina's environment, and a right to participate in decision-making that will affect their environment. At Executive Committee, it was clear that we all very much share those rights, and indeed, by bringing them forward, your organization helps to ensure that our children and their children will enjoy in Regina a very health and safety environment. Part of the point that was made at the Executive Committee was how much these rights already dovetail with the rights that have been set out, the planning that has been set out in the Regina official city plan. The city is aware of these rights. Every time we make a significant motion where environmental rights are affected, those are specifically included and analyzed in the projects that we consider, and also in our vision statement, which reads in a straightforward way, Canada's most vibrant, inclusive, attractive, sustainable community where people live in harmony and thrive in opportunity. At the Executive Committee, I raised one concern that continues to be a concern of mine, a concern that is based in a democratic belief that the proper place to decide environmental rights, the kind of environmental rights that we want, the method those environmental rights are enforced, the proper place for those kinds of decisions is with democratically elected citizens rather than through litigation in courts. I made the point. The Executive Committee decided not to modify in any way the resolution that was put forward on the right to a healthy environment because they felt that Executive Committee did not wish to qualify in any way the rights that were being put forward. And indeed, I think it's fair to say that Executive Committee felt that the matters that were raised by myself were, while maybe important, were perhaps hypothetical at this time. So I just want to recommend on behalf of the Executive Committee to Council the right to a healthy environment motion. I want to mention just very briefly the very simple words that were said to Executive Committee by the delegations, and particularly by Ms. Crane, when she said, "I care deeply about the environment." I can't imagine a more profound and more straightforward way to put forward the case. And so I leave that with Council recommending that you adopt this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Stevens, okay. Other speakers to the report? Councillor Flagel.
Thanks. I've always been a proponent of good, healthy living, but what I wrestle with is, and maybe legal can clarify for this, if we say everything that Councillor Hawkins has just used the word right, it's a right. He probably used it 15 times. Are all of these things rights of people, or are they privileges of people?
Do you want someone to answer that?
Yeah, I would like legal. Because there's a difference between an absolute right to something, or we live in an environment that allows us the privilege of having this thing. A right is a legal term, is it not? A privilege is something different. So if I could have our legal people
Mr. Solicitor, would you like
that.
to try that?
I asked this question a year ago, so.
We get the same answer, too, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Mr. Weary?
Your Worship, a right or a legal right, if it's qualified in that way, is, as Councillor Flagel has described, something that's founded in either the Constitution, legislation, or common law. A privilege is something that is different and not as strong in its impact. What's being proposed in the declaration is an acknowledgement of legal rights around a safe environment. So there is a distinction. What's being talked about here is something in the nature of a legal right.
Strictly a legal right, not a privilege to, if I could say, a privilege to clean air, clean water. Those are all rights of people, or are they privileges of people? Let's just use those two examples.
Mr. Weary?
If there was to be a change to constitutionalize a right to a safe environment, that would be one thing. We're not there yet as a province or as a country. The idea of a privilege, I struggle to answer the question. If there are legal rights that are contained, for instance, in environmental protection legislation, those are expectations that residents of a community have that these these rights or these obligations, regulatory obligations, will be followed by all of those who are active in the environment. So I'm not sure I can sort of draw out any further distinctions around privileges. As has been indicated in the report, the right to a safe and healthy environment is the responsibility of everyone. Private sector, individual citizens, residents, all levels of government. So it's wide-reaching. So I'm not sure it's all that helpful to talk in terms of privileges, because it really is a broad-based obligation that all who live in society have.
Okay, perfect, thanks. I wanted to raise that because it was something that was, I raised it a year ago, and I got much the same answer, a little bit different, but I just wanted people to know that then, because we talked about it, and maybe some of you don't remember, but we talked about other countries that are struggling just to have water, never mind any kind of water, just something. And so, I want to make sure that we do the right thing, and I'm for this. I believe we do everything possible, and that was the question I asked back when this first came out again. The people that were involved with these decisions that want the blue dot are not dissatisfied with what's going on in the city of Regina, and they sat here and they told us that exactly. They just want some more uniformity, conformity to the rest of the world or the rest of the country. So I'm for this. I don't think we're going to see, from an administrative and a city point of view, we're going to do things differently, because we're doing things the right way today from what I've been told by the organization. So thanks. I'll support it.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. I want to just pick up on a quote from the delegation, and it reads, "Personally, reaffirm my faith in the process." So I'd like to just speak to process first. People in the audience will note that in the previous report that we dealt with, one of the delegations came forward and said, "Do you have enough information to make a decision?" Well, a year ago we did not, and so we referred this back. At the time, I'm not sure everybody was real thrilled, by the way, but part of the democratic process, part of the due process, is to make sure that, in effect, we have the necessary information. So it is today easy for me to stand here and say, this is a good thing. I understand the implications, I understand what this means, and I will be supporting it. Now, if I could do one other thing, I really want to acknowledge the parents who bring their kids to Henry Baker Hall. This is a place of democracy. I hope you will come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other speakers? Councillor Price.
Thank you. I'm standing in support of this as well. I think as a nurse as well as a resident of Regina, I feel it's very important for us to actually promote health here in Regina. So I thank those who have come forward and spoken eloquently about this and have spent the last number of years, months, working on this. I think it's important for our kids, our grandkids, and the next generations to follow that we actually have a healthy environment so that our residents can have a full life in whatever they decide to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Other speakers? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. I see some people happy over there. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to our next report now that we've approved the right to healthy environment. Next delegation is Chad Novak. Mr. Novak, if you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation. There may be questions afterwards.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chad Novak, and I am here representing the Saskatchewan Taxpayers Advocacy Group, which is a grassroots organization proudly standing up for the rights of individual taxpayers. I am here to address the item before you that is recommended to be removed from the outstanding item list, and that being the 2015-2016 update for the Waste Plan Regina. Now, I've spoken on this issue previously, and I've also monitored a lot of the online discussions that occur around this topic, specifically when questionable actions of the city take place. Like, for example, the recent revelation at Christmas time that the city of Regina would not accept certain types of Christmas wrapping paper. Now, what transpired during that short time frame was the revelation that the Regina Residential Recycling Program is more about profits than it is the environment. This became quite obvious when the comment was made by Emterra that while it could recycle regular wrapping paper, it is lower quality and would not bring as much money for the company or the city, which gets a share of that profit, as you will see in Appendix A. This was then contradicted by the city in Appendix B, suggesting that these materials simply were not recyclable, which is concerning as it demonstrates a clear effort by the City of Regina to sway citizens' opinions from the truth, which was graciously explained by our partner Emterra. Now, the fact of the matter is that these items are recyclable. It's just that Emterra and, in turn, the City of Regina wouldn't realize a reasonable profit or possibly even experience a loss by recycling the material. Now, this is further supported by the fact that many of the items that we currently reject are actually recycled by many other cities in Appendix C, as is included in the list of industry-accepted recyclable materials the world over. So what first needs to happen is turning our attention away from the potential profit of a fully recyclable item. Once we do that, then we can realistically expect to see our diversion rates increase. After all, the City of Regina realizes such a minimal return from Emterra for profit sharing, average around $150,000 or about 2.5% of our total revenues in Appendix D. It's almost meaningless to look at refusing certain items simply because of their profitability. I can guarantee you, when you go to residents and tell them that they can recycle any material included in a generally accepted recycling list, not just the items that turn a tidy profit, you will realize a significant jump in your diversion rates. Not just because it's going to make things a lot less confusing for residents, but also because you're actually diverting a lot of material that is currently going to the landfill, simply because it's been determined that it doesn't make enough money. The environment needs to be the number one driver here, period. Now, it's been suggested that it's actually Emterra who is the one deciding what material gets recycled, but I've since found that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it's right there in black and white in the legally binding contract with Emterra that they, quote-unquote, shall receive all collected materials regardless of the level of contaminants. You will see in Appendix E, number 36 there, it states that. Now, further, that it will be the operator's responsibility at its sole cost, risk, and expense to dispose of all contaminants. Now, this further confirms that Emterra must accept and process every single item that residents put in the blue bins, regardless of whether or not it can be recycled, let alone its profitability. Now, with regards to what Emterra must contractually process, it is clearly stated that, again, that they must accept and process any and all of the designated materials received, as you'll see in Appendix F, number 43.
Mr. Nowak, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. As you will see in Appendix G, there is no differentiation of certain types of materials that the City of Regina has since designated as non-recyclable or non-profitable. Now, what I'm saying here is essentially that the city has the ability to enforce this contract, and Emterra is legally bound to accept and process all materials the city tells its residents to include in their blue bins. What residents deserve an answer to is this: will the city step up to the plate and encourage residents to include any and all recyclable material according to the standard practice in other jurisdictions and accepted by industry standards in their blue bins, regardless of profitability? If not, can they please explain why? It should not be residents' concerns as to whether or not it costs Emterra more money to process certain materials, and as that is something that Emterra ought to, and most likely did, take into consideration when negotiating the contract in the first place. What you really need to come to terms with is that until the city makes meaningful changes to our curbside recycling program by increasing what is accepted.
Mr. Novak, I want to stop you there. I'm sorry. It's been 5 minutes.
Not even the last two sentences?
It's 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are there questions of the delegation? You made yourself very clear on your points.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery and look at the information report, which is Waste Plan Regina. Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you. I rise to move Information Report 17-3, and I'll move the recommendations of received and
Get
filed.
a seconder for that, please. Councillor Young.
Thank you. I'll just give a little bit of history and maybe ask some questions to administration. So, In 2011, City Council adopted the enhanced residential services level option for the residential sector and extended services level for non-residential sectors. Since its implementation of the Regina Waste Plan, Regina residents have continued to decrease the total amount of waste generated each year. In 2016, residents diverted 20% of residential waste from landfills through the services provided by the city, such as the Blue Cart Recycling Program, landfill diversion, and recycling depots. City Council's target for diverting was 40% of residential waste from the landfill by 2015. This was not reached. However, additional services will be needed to achieve that target and are currently in development. So I would just like from administration just to share with us, where are we in the program? How far along are we? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll start, and I'll have Ms. Legault, our Director of Solid Waste, provide some additional information. So the implementation of the residential recycling program started with the introduction of the blue carts that service each of the residential properties. That program has taken some time to roll out, and a significant amount of effort has been put into educating residents about how to use that service to optimize how that service can support waste diversion from the landfill. There are a couple of other aspects of the plan that were set out to achieve the ultimate goal of a 40% reduction or diversion from the landfills, and those include leaf and yard waste, which is a proposal that's going to come forward to Public Works and Council later in the year. And the next program is the kitchen organics. Those programs are needed to further reach that target of 40% that we had set out in the program. So I'll ask Ms. Legault to see if there's anything additional she can provide about where we are in the program to date.
Ms. Legault?
Your Worship, along with the introduction of our curbside program in 2013, we mandated multifamily recycling at the beginning of 2015. And as Ms. Gasmo has said, we are currently developing a curbside leaf and yard program, changes to our Big Blue Bin program, which has been in the city since 1993. And we are also looking at a number of additions to the residential curbside program. And as stated in the report, items such as plastic bags and disposable coffee cups are two of the considerations that are under proposal right now.
Thank you for that update. I know there's been issues around the right stuff, I'll just put it that way, in the blue bin. So what have we done as a city to encourage that just the right stuff goes into that blue bin?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, we have spent a considerable amount of time developing communication that we have used in various formats. So the Recycle the Right Stuff campaign, you'll see on billboards, you'll see it in advertising, on our website. There's a tool on the website that can help. You can take a product and determine how best to recycle it. But in addition to that, we've also developed some educational programs that have been very well received and are in high demand. So we're out with the students and our new generation and educating them on recycling. We take as many opportunities as possible to be out in events like home shows and community organizations, also to continue to educate and communicate with the public about recycling the right stuff.
And so if I'm not sure what bin to put this into, where would I find that information?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, as I said, on the city website, there is some tools there that you can definitely go on there and whether it be through some of the printed information that's there or pictures there that help educate where to go. There's also an interactive tool that can help educate as well.
Thank you. So I've heard it said that there are items that are not profitable to recycle. I just want to make it very clear that the City of Regina is not in the recycling program for profit. We're in the recycling program for the benefit to our residents and the benefit to our environment. We provide this service for the citizens of Regina, not for some company to make money. What are we going to be doing so that we can include things that have been excluded in the past?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, again, I'll start, and Ms. Legault may be able to offer some additional things. We work very closely not only with our service providers that help provide our waste diversion services, but we also work with partners in the community. So SARCAN, and they provide, obviously, for beverage containers that can be recycled, electronics, paint. We work with, I'll have to get Ms. Legault to provide some of the other agencies, but we try to look at it from a community approach, in that it's not just the city providing the services that help with waste diversion, but it's really very much a community approach. And so we look for opportunities where we can partner and benefit from this as a community. So I'll ask Ms. Legault if there's anything additional she might have to add.
Ms. Legault?
Your Worship, the program itself, as Councillor Bryce said, is not for profit. The program has been set up based on a cost recovery. The user fee is in place to cover the costs of the program. As Ms. Gizmo said, we do work very closely with many of the partners in our community, SARCAN, paint recycling, electronics recycling. The city provides a recycling program that covers off sort of the non-specific materials that can be recycled. And so we take care of the paper, the plastic, the tin. We also take care of the glass. The system, the programs that we are looking at will look towards another major area that can be recycled, which is, or not recycled so much as composted, which is the leaf and yard and kitchen organics.
Great. At the Public Works meeting, we also talked about moving forward, how important we thought it as a committee to actually, we've got everything sitting there ready to go. Let's move forward with this and get everything started. Not that it hasn't been started, but when we talk about organic waste and the like, we want things rolling. We want things moving forward. So we sent that message back to administration as well. We also talked about how we wanted to make it easy for the residents of Regina to recycle, because that's what's going to make people recycle. You don't want to be having to decide, am I going to have to take this plastic bag, drive across town to the grocery store, I won't name a grocery store, and put it in there, because then they're wasting gas doing that. It's something that we need to have so it's easy for people to do and people want to do it. So an all-in-one sort of easy way for the residents to actually use the recycling program. So that message was passed along, and that's how we felt as a committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Other speakers to the report. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. I want to start with bins. We've got big bins, and then we go to smaller bins. So do we have any data that would indicate if you give someone the next size down bin that they in fact recycle more and have less garbage?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I'll have Ms. Legault try to answer that. It's probably some information from our audits that would help provide information on that.
Ms. Legault?
Your Worship, for the last couple of years, we've been doing curbside audits. And what it indicates is that our extra large bins, which are the 360-liter bins that we've all been very used to, are only about 60% full when they're rolled out to the curb. So the decision was made to begin an introduction of a 240-liter cart, which allows for the volume of waste that is being generated at the household to be captured within the smaller cart.
Thank you. We had also talked at the beginning of this program, and I note that a few other cities in Saskatchewan have evolved so that we in fact don't have garbage collection all week or every week, say in the wintertime and so on. So have we given some thought to that staggered type of approach? I'm assuming not with recycling, but perhaps with garbage.
Ms. Gazewell?
Through your worship, it's certainly something we continue to look at. As we have said it previously, some concerns with garbage collection in the summer without going weekly is that our garbage currently still contains the kitchen organics, and that becomes a health concern. But as we look to improve our program and look at ways to enhance our programs, that's certainly something that is being considered.
Thanks very much. I would certainly request the committee, when they meet about this again, to talk about that, and that be a topic. Two, I'm wondering, in the very beginning of this program, we talked a lot about industrial, commercial, and so on. Can I just hear a little bit more about where we're at with that and where we may evolve?
Ms. Gazewell?
Through your worship, we're actually running a pilot project this year with the City of Regina itself and introducing some amenities within our own facilities to enhance recycling. So whether it be our community and leisure centers or even within our office and administration facilities. This is somewhat twofold. First is obviously to model the way and to enhance recycling in our own facilities. But two, it's a really good test environment for us for the industrial and commercial waste environment, because many of our lines of business are very similar, and we can gather some good information on how best to introduce that service to that sector.
Thank you for that. My last question is, I happen to subscribe to a private yard service for leaves and twigs and so on. I'm wondering, one, if we are monitoring that, in other words, to learn lessons from that and so on, or are you aware of any success they're having?
Ms. Gazewell?
Through your worship, I'll have to ask Ms. Legault if they've got any data on that service.
Ms. Legault?
Your worship, through the development of a curbside leaf and yard program, we are taking a look at not only the local subscription service, but the experiences that other municipalities have had with offering up subscription services.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Dowell. Other speakers? Councillor Stevens?
So I had a follow-up question about the Blue Bin program, and I heard there that there's talk about putting forward some proposals to expand what we can currently recycle through that program, getting into styrofoam and plastic bags. I also heard that the city isn't in the business of making money on recycling, but Emterra is. So I also know that this is a cost recovery system, and we recover 100% of the cost of recycling. If we were to put plastic bags and a whole list of other items on the recycling menu, if you will, would Emterra be obliged to take it and recycle it? And we would be in a position to refuse that at the dump. Essentially, if they try to take it as waste, refusing to recycle it, what can we do about that? Does a contract actually allow us to require them to take a whole new suite of waste?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I will start again and ask Ms. Legault to add anything. I believe within our contract we have an agreement, agreed set of products that we look for Emterra to recycle. So anything that would be additional to that list would be something that would have to be negotiated through the agreement. Emterra also does have a requirement in their what I would refer to as a rejector or waste that comes out of there, and the amount of recyclables that remain in that, those quantities of those bundles that we monitor closely and work with Emterra to keep at a very acceptable limit.
If new items were going to be added that currently aren't in that contract, would it be safe to assume that we might see an increase in the recycling fees?
Ms. Gizmo?
Through your worship, I think that would be difficult for me to say for sure. It was subject to negotiations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other speakers? Councillor Bershani.
Thank you. Through your worship. Just a couple of comments in regards to the recycling. I sit on the committee, and I don't want to duplicate what Councillor Bryce has said, but I think one of the things when I ask the residents out there, there's still a confusion as to what we are able to recycle. And I think so I actually went myself on the website, And, you know, you can recycle a juice box, but there's a certain kind of juice box that you can't recycle. I don't know if it's got foil or something like that in there. So, again, if it's confusing for us, it'll be for sure confusing for the public, as well as glass. You know, we can do a certain kind of a glass. We can do a glass jar, but then there's a certain glass that that is not recyclable and not allowed in there. So I guess I would just like, I hope moving forward that we are going to be, and we're always compared to Saskatoon because, you know, if we're not doing something, people will look at Saskatoon and see what they're doing. Well, they're doing the white bags. They're doing other things. They're looking at the compost. They're looking at the kitchen, the whole. So I think that we need to start looking at things, and I hope we are, and I think there's going to be a report coming back. But again, start instead of kind of with all the research, we have to start looking at, and I agree with Councillor Stevens, is if Mterra is not the one and they don't want to look at recycling these things, then we have to move on to maybe finding a Loris or someone else who will take that. So it is easier for us because, again, that's the whole purpose of it, right, is to reduce, to have it. Of course, look at our landfill. So, I mean, we want to have it simple so people can easily recycle, and then, again, so we can reduce both ways, right? So, anyways, just a comment there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Barshani. Other speakers to the report? It's an information report. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move on to our next delegation, James Bick. This is not James Bick coming over here. If you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent for the record. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and maybe questions afterwards.
Hello, Your Worship. Yes, James Bick couldn't be in attendance tonight, so I'm Jason Carlston. I'm pinch hitting, and I'm with Dream in Regina. But I did bring a James with me. James Yelk is here from P3A. So thanks for having us here this evening. The report in front of you today is very comprehensive and provides a thorough overview of our development proposal. I'd like to thank the administration for the work they've done on this file, with particular thanks to Autumn Dawson for leading the review process to the completion of where it is today in front of you. Our vision for the property was developed from the existing uses defined in the Prestige Industrial Service Zone and our current market intelligence. So the market intelligence has indicated a demand for space from users that are seeking space with lesser needs than what would generally be offered in a commercial zone, but higher requirements than what would be found in conventional industrial zones. As such, we took a holistic approach to the site development with careful consideration spent on design, how this development would fit in with the existing Harbour Landing neighborhood, and how we can maintain functionality while being appealing to a variety of users that are permitted and discretionary within this zone. We're seeking approval for several uses at once so we can maintain flexibility when marketing at a range of users that fit within the overall vision for the site and are recognized as appropriate uses within the zone. And the development provides additional employment and amenities to the neighborhood and works to contribute to the overall success of the Harbour Landing community as a complete community. So that's our presentation for now. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson, for your presentation. Other questions? Councilor Dowell.
Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. I wonder, first of all, because you're asked, there's a number of uses that are listed. Is this the limit to the list, or does the industrial prestige area allow you to expand upon what's listed here?
There are additional discretionary uses that are available, but those aren't ones that we would be pursuing or we would see as complementary as the ones that we've identified here.
So we're pretty much seeing a complete list?
This would be our complete list unless one of the other users came forward, and we would evaluate it at that point.
Thanks very much. And clarify, please, how many buildings do you wish to build at this time?
Through your worship, there's 6 buildings on site. 2 are subject to this approval, and we would hope to proceed with 2 buildings this summer, 1 for the discretionary uses, which we're seeking approval for, and 1 dedicated more towards the permitted uses.
Okay, thanks very much. I wonder if I could ask Mr. Yelk, if you don't mind, directly on this. What will I see in this type of building compared to, and I'll let you pick a different topic, but so because not everybody sees industrial prestige and would see the, I'll call it the amenity or the look of the building, please.
Well, we'll compare it to perhaps two different applications that are nearby. One would be the Grasslands Commercial Retail. The use on this site would be more akin to a industrial, I hate to use the word industrial use, but more of a warehouse type of storage facility in the back with a small office component or showroom in the front. So, for example, a company that's selling bathroom fixtures or taps or something of the like. So it's very different from that commercial aspect. You don't see large box retailers. Where it would be different from a straight office component would be something, well, once again, we wouldn't see a purely dedicated office function. We would see something that's typically more of a mixed use. Some of the similarities would be more in the lines of the restaurant use and coffee shops and that sort of thing.
Would these buildings necessarily be larger than something in Grasslands, or larger than something I might find in a strip mall, or larger than, I'm not sure where else to...
No, I would say that the scale of the buildings is very much in line with what you would see in Harbor Landing.
Okay.
The scale of the buildings and the height of the buildings is actually well below what is allowed and is allowed under the bylaw. So I would say the scale is actually quite appropriate to its location on a thoroughfare.
So when Harbor Landing was first agreed to, this was an area set aside as industrial proceeds. It's always been set aside for this one. South and south and, I guess, west, there are residential areas. So can I ask you just to talk to lighting and traffic that may impact that area, knowing full well that they were expected to be there from the get-go?
Yes, through your worship, the land was zoned as IP since 2007, was always identified in the concept plan for sort of commercial, industrial, and office park. So office park has been developed, so we're looking at something different. Here it's the hybrid between retail and commercial, so it's since the plan was conceived in 2007, that's been identified. In terms of transportation impacts, the transportation impacts have been accounted for all of the commercial parcels along Parliament since the concept plan was developed. In terms of lighting, there's quite a bit of separation between the buildings and the surrounding residential area. Even to the west, there's a park that separates it. But there will be heavy attention paid to the interface on the west side of the site. So there'll be additional screening elements, as the report notes, where exceeding the landscaping requirements. So that's how we're paying attention to the interface.
The report also speaks to additional landscaping generally. So there is on the west side. Do you intend on doing that throughout the whole site?
Yes, through your worship, to Councillor O'Donnell, one of the elements of an industrial prestige that sets it apart from regular conventional industrial zone would be attention to the design and landscaping, so we'll be exceeding the zoning bylaw requirements.
Okay, thanks. And the other thing I noted through the diagram back at Planning Commission was the number of entrance points to this. Now, I believe it's just right in, right out off of Parliament, but on the other streets there may be other access. Could I get you to comment on that, please?
Yes, through your worship, there are 4 sites, access and egress points. On Parliament, it will be rights in, rights out. There's no median crossing. So we feel Harbour Landing Drive will have sort of the major access point. But there's also a Tudor Way access. So between the 4 for the 2 subdivided sites, it's quite ample.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other questions of the delegation? Councillor Flagel.
Thanks and welcome, gentlemen. If I remember correctly, there was always talk of a gas station somewhere in this area. This isn't that spot, but it's been approved at one point, I think, if I remember correctly, in one of our other concept plans.
So through your worship, we would intend to have a gas station, but not on this site. So at the same time, we're marketing another parcel, the parcel located on the north side of Parliament and adjacent to Parliament Avenue and Louvain, which is a major arterial commercial zone. So if a service station user came to us, that's where we would direct them. They'd be directed away from this site.
So the residents wouldn't have to worry about a gas station going up, not in this spot anyway.
Correct, as I recall from the conversation. Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Other questions of the delegation? Councillor Barshani.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question. I'm not sure if I missed it in the report. Was there public engagement in regards to kind of what the plan was going to look at all, or anything like that?
Yes, through your worship, the administration, would probably be best to speak to the impacts of that, but there was a public notification, and some comments were received, which maybe the administration would probably be best to speak to.
So, but nothing around anything else from the developer or anything like that from the background?
No,
That was needed? Okay.
no. In fact, some of the positive comments were they'd be happy to see something developed there opposed to the vacant, weeded
Lot.
field. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Parshani. Other speakers? Thank you very much, and we'll now consider the report, a discussion use application for proposed animal hospital, commercial printing, medical dental laboratory, medical clinic, vocational school, convenience store, licensed restaurant, etc. on the site. This is on Parliament Avenue. Councilor O'Donnell.
Thank you. I'll introduce this and ask for a seconder.
Seconder, please. Councilor Young.
Thanks very much. First thing is, Planning Commission will endorse this. One, from the very get-go, in terms of the plan for Harbor Landing, this piece of land was meant to be what is being described to you now. So there's a number of uses, so really what you're being asked to do is agree that there can be a medical, vocational, convenience, et cetera, those on the site. You will note from the report, the number of parking stalls is far exceeded. This is along a very major road, Parliament Avenue, but also teeters on some other fairly major roads, and saw that this was consistent with the plan that was before us, saw these amenities as being useful. Seek concurrence.
Thank you, Councilor O'Donnell. Other speakers for the report? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We move on to the consideration of the Regina Office Policy Review. Judith Versek, you come forward, please, and identify yourself for the record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions from council after.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Fougere and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on Regina's office development policy on behalf of the Regina Downtown Business and Permit District. I'm here today to support the recommendations being made by City of Regina administration regarding the 2016 City of Regina Office Policy Review. Since the introduction of the revised office development policy, the office vacancy rate has increased from 4.24% in 2013 to 13.26% in 2016, and that was the recent figure released by Colliers 2 weeks ago. Some of the factors responsible for the increase in the vacancy rate include new construction built on spec, tenants vacating space to move into new construction, contraction of government office space, and previous non-competitive space returning to inventory to market. Additionally, there are 4 office developments that have yet to begin construction: Harbor Landing Phase 4, the Connexus Head Office, the CNIB redevelopment project, and 2410 Dudney Avenue. Currently, the vacancy rate clearly exceeds the limit of 6.5% that is identified in the official community plan. And as these planned office developments come to fruition, the vacancy rate will most likely continue to rise. Comments made by other stakeholders in the report indicate that the distribution in other Canadian cities is roughly a 50-50% split between downtown and the suburbs for office developments. While we typically look to our peers for best practices to model ourselves after, in this particular case, we are in fact the best practice. For downtowns to maintain their status, it is important they are able to attract office growth. The Regina Development Plan, the precursor to the current OCP, included an innovative policy to concentrate office space within its downtown core and the inner city neighborhoods to solidify downtown as the heart of commerce for the city. This policy has led to 83% of office space being located within the central city office area and 71% in downtown. The policy placed strategic restrictions on office building development outside of downtown, and as a result, Regina has the highest density of downtown jobs in Canada, 375 jobs per hectare.
Achieving this density is not only important for downtown vitality, but is also important in maximizing transportation and infrastructure investments. Office growth will further strengthen the area by drawing in more secondary, retail, entertainment, and residential investment into downtown. And this office policy was identified as a best practice in the recent Value of Investing in Canadian Downtowns study completed by the Canadian Urban Institute in 2013. The RD-BID endorses the City's current office development policies contained in Section D5. Given the current office vacancy rate in downtown Regina, RD-BID supports the policy's continued application and strongly urges that no further office development be permitted elsewhere in the city except within the downtown/central city office area, or as may otherwise be permitted by the policy, until such time as downtown vacancy falls below the established policy threshold of 6.5%. Downtown Regina is the primary employment base and hub of economic activity in our city and is one of the greatest assets defined in the Regina Downtown Neighborhood Plan. Keeping this in mind, RD-BID strongly opposes any relaxation of the existing policy, as it will continue to jeopardize the viability of downtown as the preferred location for future office development.
Ms. Verzik, you have 1 minute to go.
RD-BID commends the City of Regina for developing and adopting an office development policy that continues to support downtown growth and prosperity. This policy demonstrates the city's continued commitment to the revitalization of our downtown. Now that we've been able to realize the important benefits this policy has created, we look forward to continue working with the City of Regina and our fellow stakeholders to ensure that the office development policy continues to support sustainable growth that is beneficial to both downtown and the city as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there questions of the delegation? Made yourself perfectly clear. Thank you very much. We can return to the gallery, and we will now speak to Nicole Templeton, please. Ms. Templeton, if you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent, and you have 5 minutes as well for your presentation.
Hi, I'm Nicole Templeton, and I represent Harvard Developments. Good evening, Your Worship, members of City Council and City Administration. The City's commitment to strengthening the downtown and making it the economic hub of the city has in turn given companies and individuals the confidence to invest in the downtown. The City has seen growth in office, retail, restaurants, and residential development in the downtown since this policy was developed, creating vibrancy in both evening presence along with regular daytime activity. The office market has a long way to go to get back to a healthy vacancy rate. The overall vacancy rate is approximately 13%, with some buildings almost entirely empty. This policy will help support the growth of Regina's office market within the core, and hopefully in the years to come, that office vacancy rate will moderate. Although the current vacancy rate is higher than the threshold stated within the office policy, it does not restrict office development. There are still many opportunities to develop and redevelop office space within the boundaries of College and 4th, Osler and Angus. The boundaries, and there's a small cutout in there. And the office development can occur within these boundaries regardless of the office policy. The office policy aligns with the official community plan and promotes the downtown to be our primary business center, and with it, Regina's downtown will continue to have growth in its retail, residential, and hospitality industries. By concentrating office workers in the downtown, this also supports the growth of alternate transportation, such as transit, carpooling, biking, and walking to work. I would like to thank City Administration for all of their work regarding the office policy and the official community plan. Harvard Developments is in full support of the recommendation being put forward by the City Administration with respect to the office policy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton, for your presentation. Are there questions of the delegation? Oh, you made yourself clear as well. Thank you very much. So we have a communication from Mavis and Young. If I could have a motion to receive and file that. Councillor Murray, a seconder, please. Councillor Bryce, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next report is the 2016 City of Regina Office Policy Review. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. If I could have a seconder, I'll speak to this.
Seconder, please. Councillor Stevens.
Thanks very much. This is actually a piece of information. You heard from the delegations, and you would have read through the report that there are certainly some different views on how this should work out, but there are no recommended changes to the current policy, and that's what is enclosed in here. You will note also as one of the recommendations that you'll see another report in 2018 when there is a 5-year review after this. So piece of information, obviously seek concurrence.
Discussion on the report. Councillor Stevens.
Actually, I know the delegate isn't here to speak to it, but I was hoping the administration or members of the committee could, in the Avison Young report, there's mention here of why some office development deserves to be in the suburban area, and I certainly support the concentration of urban and commercial space in the downtown, but I'm just curious if maybe the administration can give me a bit of a highlight here. What deserves to be built in a suburban area when it comes to office space?
Ms. Harlock?
Through you, Your Worship, when we looked at the policies within the OCP, we did look at office areas, and during the consultation originally, it was for larger businesses that had fleets of vehicles and those sorts of things, where they were looking to have the ability to have office space outside of the downtown area or the core area. And so we did identify within the OCP 2 office areas to allow that, as you know, with the policies.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other questions on the report? Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Just a very quick clarification as well. Will continuing, I'm in support of this currently, but by continuing for the next 5 years, are we in any way risking our ability to complete neighborhoods, complete developments, I should say, that provide working space, school, et cetera?
Ms. Harlock?
Through you, Your Worship. No, I think with the complete neighborhoods, we still have opportunities for employment within those neighborhoods. The review of the OCP, the 5-year review, is coming up here in 2018. So we're going to have more information, look at the policies, and have more information to bring forward to Council when we do our 5-year review of the OCP as a whole.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Other speakers? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the report, you mentioned lands that are still available for people who wish to build, and you mentioned the GTH, the Wascana Center Authority lands, and the Regina Airport. So those are areas where people could actually build office buildings rather than downtown. And I want to clarify, when you say Wascana Center Authority lands, you're talking about not the lands around the ledge and the lake, but the lands to the south by the university?
Ms. Harlock?
Through you, Your Worship, those lands are not within the jurisdiction of the city, as you know, so it would be up to those authorities as to whether or not they would allow that type of use. We do have continued dialogue with those entities and authorities, and would express our concerns with having that type of office going into those areas. But at the end of the day, what we would be providing is advice and our own feelings in order to achieve our OCP. But at the end of the day, they are their own authorities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. There's no other speakers. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move on to committee reports. Community Protective Services, the Prairie Partnership for the Arts Research. Councillor Flagel.
Your Worship, I have to rise in a point of order. I have a conflict of interest in this case. This motion involves the allocation of city resources to the university, and I am employed by the university, so I'll excuse myself.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stevens.
I'll have to excuse myself for a similar reason. I'm also an employee of the university.
Duly noted in the minutes. Thank you, gentlemen, and we'll just wait for them to clear the room, and then we will continue on. What's that? Councillor Flagel.
Thank you. I rise in support of this recommendation of Community Protective Services, CR 17-14. If I could get a seconder, please.
Seconder for this, please. Councillor Fundura.
The recommendation states that City Council approve the city's participation in the Prairie Partnership for the Arts Research, known as PPAR, as further outlined in this report. The Director of Community Services be authorized to approve up to 7-year multi-party agreement with the PAR members organization regarding the city's participation and contribution to PAR as further outlined in this report. And also that the Director of Community Services be authorized to negotiate and approve up to 7-year multi-party party collaboration research agreement, as well as any other related ancillary agreements that may be required in relationship to the project, such as regarding confidentiality, intellectual property, data, and subcontracting as further outlined in this report. And then it go to City Council as an approved amendment, approved through the Council. Mary Blackstone represented University of Regina, and E. McWilliams represented University of Regina as well, spoke on this, and it's basically just to set the standards within the report, and Mr. Onright might be able to enlighten us a little bit more if anybody has any questions, but it's a pretty good program. It's something that's been looked at, needed, and a 7-year agreement is a nice way to start it off. So we recommend concurrence.
Thank you for that. I guess to Mr. Onright, do you have any background material you want to provide in addition to what the Councilor Flagel just mentioned?
Through your worship, this research project is going to assist us when we're looking at the Community Investment Grant Program. The information coming from the report will come as a part of the research with 29 other organizations. It's also going to involve some research being done nationally and internationally. So we look forward to participating, and the information will be valuable. It will be over the term of the 7 years. We will get information as the project moves forward.
Thank you, Mr. Onright. Other questions or comments on the report? I have one question, and Councilor Young, you go first. Didn't see you there. You have to raise your hand a bit higher.
Thank you. I'm at the end of the thing, so nobody sees me. This is great. Thank you, Your Worship. You know, I've worked in the arts in education and in other areas almost throughout my public service, and one of the issues always is we know its value, but we don't have any data to really support that. So I was really pleased to see this coming forward. And my question is that the arts education is a really important foundation for building a community that partakes of and appreciates the arts. Will there be any information collected about education programs?
Mr. Onright?
Through you, Your Worship, I'll ask Ms. Shaley to comment.
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Your Worship, yes, there will be information. A number of the organizations that are participating, not only do they include municipalities, but arts educators, artists themselves. So there's a whole range of organizations that are a part of the research project, including educators.
Okay. Will any of that be the K-12 system, or will it just be artists who are also arts educators?
Ms. Shaley?
Through you, Your Worship, the research plan has yet to be designed, and so the university and the organizations that are partnering will work together to design the research project. So that's not a question that I can answer at this point in time, but I'm sure that would be explored as they design the research methodologies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Young. Other questions or comments? I have a question in terms of the process, and it is a 7-year multi-party agreement, so I'm assuming that there's going to be regular reports to the Community Protective Services Committee on what's actually being done. And when an agreement is reached, that the committee will see what that is and they can comment on what that looks like. Is that the case, Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, we definitely can update committee on the progress, and we can definitely update once an agreement is in place.
Would that be, once agreements are in place, would it be an annual report back or semi-annual, or how do you see this, Mr. Onright?
I would think probably annually, because it is stretched out over 7 years, so just to see enough progress to report back on, that we would bring a report to CP&S annually.
So I'm wondering to the administration if it's more practicable to have a motion to request that, or just simply as an undertaking that you will provide a report annually. Mr. Onright?
Through Your Worship, administration would undertake the process to come back to Community and Protective Services.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Other questions or comments on the report? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Move on to Executive Committee once we have the Deputy Mayor back in the room. And Councillor Stevens. He's at the other side, I believe. Welcome back, gentlemen. We're now involved with the Executive Committee report, the CR 17-15. This is 2017 citizen appointments for committees. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Bear with me a half a second here. There we go. On behalf of the Executive Committee, I'd like to recommend that the following individuals be appointed to the Regina Board of Police Commissioners for terms in the office indicated below. Mr. Gord Sellinger, March 1, 2017 to December 31, 2017. Mr. Vic Pankratz, same term. And secondly, I'd like to move, as part of that motion, that the following individuals be appointed to the Regina Public Library Board for a term of office indicated below. Ms. Marge Gavigan, and the terms are listed there. They're all March 1, 2017 to December 31, 2017. Ms. Barbara March Burwell, Ms. Elaine Cavisto, Mr. Elmer Brenner, Ms. Starla Grabinski, Ms. Cindy Kobayashi, and Mr. Sean Quinlan. And then following individuals be appointed to the Board of Revision for a term of office as indicated below. And again, they're March 1, 2017 to March 31, 2017. For the first two, and then you'll see for the next two it's 2018, and the final one is 2019. The names are Mr. Greg Neen, Ms. Pamela Snyder, Ms. Linda Padel, Mr. Walter Antonio, and Mr. Randy Schellenberg. And then finally, the following individuals be appointed to the Regina Planning Commission for a term of office indicated below. These terms are March 1, 2017 to December 31, 2019. Mr. David Bale, Mr. Andre Kroger, Mr. Steve Tunison, and that the members appointed to each board, committee, or commission continue to hold office for a term indicated for each vacancy or until their successors are appointed.
This is second for that, please.
I just want to mention this is a standard motion to staff these various committees, and I just note that care has been taken in all of these cases to make sure that the committee representation is as inclusive as possible. Thank you.
Discussion.
I just wanted to,
Rice?
if that's okay, just the last four on the library board, the last four on the terms ending 2018, and I know that you mentioned for that whole board 2017, so just to make sure that that's, if you want to make that amendment or...
I think you actually said that during the discussion. I believe you said that.
He did for the rest of them, except not the library.
But it's in the motion.
I want to thank Councillor Bryce. I'm going for an eye examination at the end of the week, so that may help.
Other discussion on the appointments? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The out-of-scope 2017 general wage increase. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Your Worship. The recommendation here from the Executive Committee is one that out-of-scope employees receive a 1.5 general wage increase effective January 1, 2017, and two, the city's executive leadership team not receive a general wage increase for 2017. If you get a seconder.
Seconder for that, please. Councillor Murray?
Thank you very much. I just want to make a couple of points with respect to this. These are very modest wage increases. Out-of-scope employees' wage increases generally reflect to some degree, to a large degree, the wage settlements that are made with the collective agreement with the collective agreements with cities' employees. In this case, 1.5% is slightly less than some of those. The second thing I want to notice is the city's executive team is not taking a general wage increase. This reflects, I think, the economic climate. It also reflects the commitment and the dedication of our senior executive leadership team. I think it's important to note that they have voluntarily agreed to waive any wage increase, and I want to underline that point. These are wage increases which, as you'll see in the report, continue to enable the city to be competitive in terms of getting top-flight, out-of-scope personnel to work with us. These are also wage increases that recognize the challenges we have with budgets these days, and so it achieves a mutual objective. I think it's a very good recommendation. I'm pleased to bring it to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Speakers to the report. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Public Works and Infrastructure, the increase in engineering service fees for the master plan in Arcola and detention center, facility. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. I'll move the recommendations that the City Council delegate the authority for the Executive Director of Transportation and Utilities to extend the commission to AECOM Canada Limited to exceed $500,000 to complete the design, tender, preparation, and construction supervision of the Arcola Avenue Detention Facility project.
Seconder, please. Councillor Fundera.
Thank you. I'm just going to give a little bit of history and then maybe ask for more information from administration. The scope of the work was phased because the city did not want to commit to phase 2 until construction scope, schedule, and costs were successfully completed at the end of phase 1 to the satisfaction of the city. Based on the pre-design, the original scoping costs were estimated to be approximately $5 million. Following phase 1, a detailed design phase, it was determined that the project scope was larger than expected due to site constraints, addition of stormwater lift station, and additional large diameter storm sewers required. So that's what the change in this is for. Maybe if administration wants to expand upon that, if they do.
Ms. Gizmo, do you have any further comments?
Through your worship, I think the Councillor Bryce captured it quite well. As described, after phase 1, there was a couple different constraints that increased the scope of this project. The first being some contamination in the current site that required some additional cleanup. The original site was designed for a gravity feed, which no longer could be accommodated, and had to accommodate a pump to be added to the design, and then some additional improvements to the existing stormwater and water mains in the areas were required, that also required associated road repairs with it. So all of those increased the scope of the project to about $8.5 million. The consulting fees of $871,000 approximately are in line with a project of that size.
Thank you. Public Works Committee recommended concurrence.
Thank you for that. Other comments or questions on the report? Very important work to be done. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll now move to Planning Commission. There's 3 reports. The first one is a discretionary use application for a house form commercial restaurant on Scar Street. Councillor O'Donnell.
Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconder for it. Councillor Young.
Thanks very much. This is a house at 2858 Scar Street, built in 1926. The idea is to save the house and make it a restaurant. So we've done this a few times with house form commercial. We have yet to find a problem, by the way, just to be real clear. Seems to add to the neighborhood, and we would seek the same concurrence on this one.
Discussion on the report. Okay. No other comments on this one. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next report is a street name change for part of Tar Road between Victoria Avenue East and Arcola Avenue. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you. Again, if I have a seconder, I'll speak to this.
Seconder. Councillor Fundera.
Thanks very much. So Tower Road currently exists all the way from the north, all the way to the south on the very east side of the city, but with the new bypass, of course, it gets divided. So there is no natural transition from crossing Victoria Avenue anymore from tower to tower. So there's a good opportunity to rename the road. The road would be named on the south side, that is from Victoria all the way down to Arcola after Glen Anaquad. Extremely suitable, gentlemen. Love to see this happen. Seek your concurrence.
Discussion on the report. Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Just a quick question. There would be no cost incurred based on this road name change as opposed to some other changes that have been proposed.
Ms. Howard?
Through you, Your Worship, we would just have the general costs for the signs and those sorts of things with respect to the changing of the name. Ms. Folk, do you have anything else to add?
Through Your Worship, no, just the cost of changing the sign.
Thank you.
Other speakers? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The third report is the 2017 Municipal Awards. Councillor O'Donnell.
May I have a seconder? I'll speak to this, please.
Seconder. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks very much. We are recommending through Planning Commission following Municipal Heritage Awards be presented. A, Rehabilitation category, Viterra Building, Sherwood Department Store. B, Restoration category, Saskatchewan Legislative Building Dome. C, New Design category, St. Paul's Cathedral Community Center Addition. And D, the Education category, Downtown Regina Cultural Trailway. There's lots of information in the report. Saw clearly that all these are very valuable additions to our community, or upgrades to our community, actually. Seek your concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Speakers? Questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. We have three information items this evening. One of them is a supplemental report on the Residential Rail Renewal Program annual report, then the report itself, and then there's one on the candidates' campaign contributions and expenses. Are you moving all three?
I can move all
Move
three.
all three. A seconder for all three? Councillor Massanelli? Councillor Bryce, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to start by speaking to the first one, which is our IR 17-4, which is a supplemental report for Public Works 17-8, which is the Residential Road Renewal Program Annual Report. As you remember, a very short time ago, during City Council budget meeting, we spoke about the residential road renewal, and there were two wards within that residential road renewal program this year that did not receive any work. That would be Ward 7 and Ward 4. So this adds two projects onto that list, one for Ward 7 and one for Ward 4. I'd just like to briefly talk, because we talked about the report after this, which is the annual report for the residential road renewal at Public Works, but we were having issues with this. We need a sense of fairness throughout the city when we look at road projects, especially for the residential road renewal. Each of the people who talk about the residential road renewal, that 1% of taxes, are very proud that that's going for residential roads. But when complete wards are missed within that, and I know it wasn't originally a criteria to base the repairs on, but when you have a complete ward that's missed, two complete wards that are missed, there's a sense of fairness that hasn't been happening. So I'd just like possibly if we could get administration's input on how we're going to change this ongoing from here.
Ms. Gizmo?
Through Your Worship, as stated in the report, we added two locations this year, certainly in response to what we heard at Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, and that we have committed in the report that we're bringing back in the fall that looks at the criteria for the residential road renewal program, that we will include a discussion and some recommendations on the point that you've brought forward for Council's consideration.
Thank you. I have a couple of words to end my part with this off. I just strongly feel that we need to have that sense of fairness throughout the city. If there's wards that are missed, it makes it feel unfair to those residents. Even if it's just for that 1 year, it still feels unfair that no work's been done in that area. So I think ongoing, we're going to look at that sense of fairness throughout the ward system, throughout the city, so that yes, it may not be fair exactly in that 1 year, but within a couple of years, there should be a fairness until all the roads are in excellent condition. Then we can look and pick and choose what needs to be done. But until we reach that point, there has to be a sense of fairness, and it totally is not acceptable to have a ward or two missed completely for a year residential road renewal. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Price. And perhaps either to Ms. Gizmo or to the city manager, you can talk about what exactly is the process going to look like in the fall when you look at different criteria. Just to perhaps go through that for those listeners watching and for the rest of council. To the city manager.
So through you, Your Worship, as Ms. Gizmo has indicated, as a part of the annual update in terms of this year's program, the concerns have been raised in terms of equitability and fairness. The actual geographic distribution by ward to this point has not been a part of the criteria. The administration is going to review that and bring forward as a part of that report recommendations for council's consideration that will make that a part of the criteria on an annual basis. So there will be an opportunity for investment in each ward, ensuring that obviously there are roads within a ward that meet the criteria for improvement. So you will see, as Ms. Gizmo indicated, the report that will make recommendations for your consideration.
Thank you. Councilor Brasciani.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to repeat anything that Councillor Bryce has already said, but just a little background. When I was reading through the report, the whole reason for the road renewal, right, is to ensure that the roads that are very poor, right, or are not getting worse. So we're looking at fair to good roads, so they're not getting worse. So, my thought was, in every area of the city, we know we have those. So you can talk to any resident, and they know that there are those roads in every area, ward, whatever. So I thank you for looking forward, moving forward to looking at a road and evening it out, the distribution. Because I think, though, in a lot of the stuff that the city does, we have to be looking at that. Not just looking at certain areas. I think we have to start looking at things across the whole city. And when you look at a city map, you would know that we've missed 2 areas, right? And so I think, in all fairness with that, I am glad that we are going to be looking at more and increasing that. But I really hope that moving forward, it's in more of it's the bigger picture stuff, because I think it's unfair. When we talked to our residents, they were happy that 1% was going to be designated to their roads. And so again, when we saw the report, or I saw the report again, yes, it was very I think disheartening that when people see that and there's not a road in their area, I think that they would say, well, why? How could that be? So again, I look forward to the report in the fall, and moving forward to see what's going to be for 18 and 19. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brasciani. Other speakers to any one of the 3 reports? Motions to accept all 3 reports. Councilor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move to a different area. Appendix B, the candidate's campaign contribution list. And I have several questions for the clerk and possibly one for the city solicitor. First of all, in Appendix B, you see that there are 10 individuals who did not submit their disclosure of election contribution expenses to the returning officer by the January 24th deadline. What effort was made to have those individuals submit the outstanding report?
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. To the councillor's question, the Elections Office contacted all candidates and reminded them of the requirements under the legislation to file within 90 days. The fact of the matter is 40 of the 50 candidates filed.
The second question that follows on from that is, what are the consequences of non-disclosure?
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it easier if I explain the fact that for those members who are elected to City Council, you are held to a different standard by legislation. So if you are elected and do not file within the 90 days as prescribed in legislation, you are subject to disqualification from council and potentially being barred from running for future election for up to 12 years. For those candidates who are unsuccessful, they lose their deposit of $100, and then on a case-by-case basis, it would be determined as to whether we would pursue legal action through a summary conviction offense. But that is what is set out in provincial legislation, so it is somewhat of a vacuum.
So, Your Worship, I just want to be clear on this. This is provincial legislation. provincial legislation does allow for the city to pursue by way of summary action those people who fail to file. Have I got that correct? And aside from the people who are elected for council, because none of these people are elected, the city is able to proceed on summary offense, against these who have not filed. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be my understanding of that, sir, but I would ask Mr. Wary if he wishes to add to that.
Mr. Wary?
Thank you, Your Worship. The city clerk has identified the legal framework for these offenses.
And again, following up, what is the city's position? Are we proceeding by way of summary offense against these individuals that haven't filed?
Mr. Wary?
No decision has been made about whether to pursue any of the people that are in non-compliance at this point.
When can we expect a decision?
Mr. Wary?
I don't have an answer for you at this point. It will be between the clerk as the returning officer to make a determination whether charges will be pursued or whether there'll be other methods followed to enforce compliance.
Your Worship, I think this is a serious matter. This might be one of the most serious matters that the Council deals with because it goes to the very integrity of the electoral process. Unless we proceed to enforce the obligation to disclose, it means that those who are successful in legislation face a very serious penalty, exclusion from municipal politics for many years. It means that those who lose, unless we proceed, get away scot-free. So if you were doing a calculation as a candidate and were nefarious about it, you might say to yourself, well, if I win, you might say, I'll spend as much money as I can. If I don't win, who cares? If I win, I may care more. But the point of the matter is that the whole electoral process is distorted unless everybody plays by the same rules. I'm going to serve notice of motion at this council meeting. It may not come to this, but I'm going to serve a notice of motion that I intend to bring a motion to the next council meeting that the city proceed against these 10 individuals and one who is missing, against these 10 individuals by way of summary proceedings for failure to disclose election contributions and expenses. I serve notice of that now, but I hope I don't have to. I hope I don't have to pursue it. I hope that we proceed within the next month against these individuals so that they take their responsibilities seriously, in particular the responsibilities to the democratic process. The only other thing I'd note is that in respect to Ward 2, I note that 2 individuals haven't disclosed, but there's a third whose disclosure I couldn't find in the materials. So I leave it with the clerk to check that to make sure that that list is complete.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Any discussion on any other of the 3 reports? Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will just concur with Councillor Hawkins and just simply that if we impose a limit, if the Elections Act has the limit of $13,000, give or take, dollars for a councillor to run, if it's not imposed, I don't see the point of it even existing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. So there is no motion. It's a notice of motion, so we're not voting on that tonight. It's simply receive and file. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll go to bylaws. We have 3 of them. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I move, seconded by Councillor Bryce, that bylaws number 2017-5, 8, and 9 be introduced and read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell, that bylaws number 2017-5, 8, and 9 be read a second time.
Any discussion on the bylaws? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. I move, seconded by Councillor Mancinelli, that Council hereby consents bylaws number 2017-5, 8, and 9 go to third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
Finally, I move, seconded by Councillor Young, that bylaws number 2017-5, 8, and 9 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion to adjourn.
I'll move adjournment.
Okay. Councilor Flanagan seconds it. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great evening.